Chapter 280. Congratulations on successfully poaching a gold guide. Nowadays, although there are many Western continent people in 9 regions, and there is no lack of influential people, I'm afraid it's not easy to find a guide better than Aya. Before she ascended the throne, she was already a learned nobleman. The queen has a broad vision and extensive knowledge. Moreover, because of her nature, she has an unusual interest in rare treasures. She is well known in treasure hunting, collection, and other aspects. Although she has been away from the Western continent for nearly 100 years, you don't need someone to help you find a fashion holy land, but a legendary immortal treasure. Thus, there is no more suitable guide than Aya. On the non-phase peak, Wang Wu patted her disciple's shoulder with emotion. It was really not easy to persuade Aya. In fact, she had also thought of the method that Wang Lu thought of many years ago, but unfortunately she didn't have the capital to put it into practice. Although Aya had a paranoid side, she was by no means a stupid person. Trying to fool her with a set of sensational theory would only make her unhappy. The crux of Aya's problem was the way to win every war, so the quickest way to cut the tangled knot was to find a set of way to win every war. Wang Wu also thought of this in the past, but unfortunately she couldn't be like Wang Lu, who fiercely patted her chest and vowed that she would win every war, and that her life trajectory was the way to win every war. Although at that time she had already mastered the king pill and had the title of the #1 king pill in 9 regions. However, this cultivation came precisely from the crushing defeat in her early years. To say that she was invincible, she was not qualified. Similarly, the other elders on the non-phase peak were also the same. Only Wang Lu, the chosen one who won every war with irresistible force, was qualified to boast such words, and was qualified to bear the trust of Aya. Hey, it's still far from it. Wang Lu picked up the teacup, which was only a shallow layer of tea. He shook the teacup in front of Aya's eyes and said, Aya's trust in me is at most the level of this cup of tea. After all, she is an experienced and knowledgeable king, so it is impossible to convince her in one go. I can only do it step by step. But at least she agreed to go down the mountain with you. Yes, I can barely survive without the support of the earth veins, but it's only at the lowest level. Most of the time, she couldn't even maintain her physical body. I needed to prove myself through more victories in order to gradually restore her strength as a heroic spirit. However, this is not something that can be done in just 3 or 5 days, so for a very long time, she will probably only be able to exist as an old granny that you carry around with you. Speaking of this, I heard that in order to persuade her to come down the mountain, you swore not to take the king pill until you restore your country? Wang Lu said, it's nothing, right? Originally, he planned to postpone the king pill for a few years, so he could use this opportunity to increase Aya's favorability. That guy usually looks easy to talk to, but his heart is still very closed, so it's very difficult to get a favorable impression. Moreover, in this trip to the Western continent, it's inevitable that we have to deal with the local forces. If we can have the king as our backer, it would be more convenient. It's easy to say. Her country has been destroyed for 100 years. It's easier said than done to revive it. That depends on the standard of restoring the country. I have some confidence in this. In fact, in my opinion, Aya is the type that is easy to persuade. She is stubborn and has a strong sense of morality, which is very easy to do. The smile on his master's face became a bit thicker. Even the most difficult problem, it seems like you have a solution. Then I only have one question. Go ahead. Regarding his master's continuous questions, Wang Lu was very patient. After all, in order to persuade Aya this time, the background information provided by his master was crucial. When can I drink your wedding wine? Puff. Wang Wu calmly used her primordial spirit to control the sword light to block the incoming tea. Seriously, you've been drinking that tea for so long, don't you think it's disgusting to suddenly spit it out? You're disgusting. Drink your sister's wedding wine. Wang Wu said with a smile, haven't you thought about it? Although Aya's seniority is a bit higher, she's a bit short, her figure is a bit poor, and her craftsmanship is a bit poor, but it's undeniable that she's a rare beauty. Moreover, she has extensive knowledge, noble background, and powerful strength. The most important thing is that she has the body of the brave departed, so you don't have to worry about pregnancy. What else can you ask for? I will remember to convey these words to Aya. When she's protected by the feng shui line on the mountain, she can only exert strength close to unity stage. I wish you good luck, master. Humph, if worst comes to worst, I'll just wander around, why would I be afraid of you? But seriously, you're not that young anymore. You're already in your 20s, so you should think about life's major event. Wang Wu said, took a sip of the tea and then lightly said, you can't really be single for a lifetime, right? I see that although there are many beautiful women around you, the one that's really compatible with you is probably only Aya. Lu Li is like a younger sister by Shen is raised as a daughter by you, not to mention Zhu Shiyao. Wang Lu shook his head. Don't say that. Aya and I don't have a common view, so there's no future for the two of us. After thinking for a moment he said, at most I'll be your mistress. Wang Wu gawked for a moment, and then she couldn't help but laugh. You really don't want to die? What? Wang Lu frowned, and then his intuition told him that something was wrong. When he turned around he saw Aya, dressed in white, holding a lunchbox, lightly standing behind him. Her indifferent face carried a touch of sullen anger. Then a faint voice came from those two light pink lips. Mistress? Wang Lu thought for a moment, and in an instant, thousands of perfunctory reasons emerged in his mind. However, when he saw Aya's pair of clear eyes, all the hypocritical lies couldn't come out of his mouth. That being the case, he might as well tell the truth. Don't you want to do it, girl? The next moment, a lunchbox filled with all kinds of dishes came toward his head. It was already a month later when Wang Lu and the team left Spirit Sword Mountain. The composition of the team was not complicated. Wang Lu was the captain, Aya was the guide, and Lu Li, Bai Shixin, and Quan Zuhua were the team members. Initially, they also considered big sister Zhu Shiyao, but unfortunately, she has been named by her master Feng Yin to join the excavation management's team and went to the west as a follower. As for other people like Yu Xinyao and Wen Bao, although their cultivation base had made great progress in the past few years, because of the law of the two continents, cultivators below the level of King Pill would be greatly suppressed. Only Wang Lu and other successor disciples had the courage to go against the suppression of the continent's law in the Western continent. Over the past month, the team spent most of their time preparing various kinds of materials. Under the guidance of Aya, they collected a lot of rare treasures of the 9 regions, trying to be as prepared as possible. At the same time, they also made a full plan for their trip to the Western continent. If you want to find immortal treasures, the first stop should be the Golden King's treasure house. According to legend, all the treasures in the world were collected there, but later on they were constantly lost. Many of the legendary treasures actually came from the Golden King's collection. Of course, now it seems that this is just an exaggeration of later generations. After all, in 9 regions alone, there are many immortal treasures that are not later than Golden King. However, the Golden King's treasure house has always had a peculiar property, that is, it gathers all the ownerless treasures in the world. Any treasure, once it is out of the protection of its master, may be summoned by the Golden King's treasure house and appear there. Hey, isn't that very powerful? But Golden King has been dead for a long time, so the treasure house itself is ownerless. Therefore, many people will go to the treasure house to dig the inexhaustible treasure. In my lifetime, the place where the treasure house is located has been called Taba. Oh, by the way, according to the Gregorian calendar of the Western continent, on the 11th of November every year, the Golden King's treasure house will be more open, and the chance of finding the treasure will increase a lot. I believe there will only be more people who will go bankrupt there. Of course, although the treasure house is ownerless, there are still guardians. At the same time, all the people who die in the treasure house will become the guardians of the treasure house. Therefore, on the 11th of November every year, when a large number of treasures are excavated, there will also be a large number of adventurers who will stay in the treasure house forever. Speaking of which, it is somewhat similar to the group of immortal tombs that you are currently preparing to excavate. It can be seen that no matter what, there will always be some boring people. So, do you think the key to the group of immortal tombs is likely to be hidden in the Golden King's treasure house? Yes, because as far as I know, the treasure that best fits your description is the sword of Golden King. That sword has never appeared in the Western continent, so it's likely to be hidden in the depths of the treasure house. At the same time, even if it's not the sword of Golden King, because the time doesn't match. Since it's not known to me, the biggest possibility is that it's in the treasure house. Very logical reasoning. Then let's go directly to Taba. At this moment, the advantage of bringing Aya with them was undoubtedly evident. As the king of a country in the Western continent, the information that she grasped was far better than that of ordinary people. For example, the treasure house of Golden King was indeed known by many people in the Western continent. However, the principle of the treasure house was rarely known, let alone the sword of Golden King. As a matter of fact, the team assembled by the excavation management did not take the treasure house of Golden King as their primary goal. Because, in their view, the so-called treasure house of Golden King was just a heritage that had been excavated for many years, so it didn't have too much value of attention. The first stop of the excavation management's team was the knowledge capital of the country of dragons in the western continent. They hoped to find clues in the Library of Endless Mystery, which was said to contain 80% of the knowledge in the continent, and then carry out a targeted search. The knowledge capital is indeed a good choice, but too much knowledge will only increase the difficulty of distinguishing and filtering. If we want to find the needed information there, I'm afraid it will take a long time. Of course, if we don't get the desired result in our first stop, then we still have to go to the knowledge capital. Rest assured, I have a hunch that things will not be that troublesome. The first stop will certainly have what we want. No, it's even more than expected. Chapter 281. Oh, it's more prosperous than the last time I came here. It's simply earth-shaking. On a spacious road, Aya, who was wearing a gray cloak, was surprised to see the tall buildings and endless traffic on both sides. Now, together with Wang Lu and the others, she had arrived at the westernmost part of the 9 regions, a city called Heaven's Road. As far as the eye could see, it was a bustling scene. This is one of the trade hubs between the east and west continents. Moreover, it's a newly built port city, so naturally, it's changing with each passing day. When you came here, it was just built 100 years ago. It's not much better than a small fishing village, but now it's a big city with a population of tens of thousands. In addition to the prosperity, what was even more impressive was the mixed and open culture of this place. With the development of trade, the communication between the east and west continents became integrated, and the birth of all kinds of cultural crystallization was even more eye-catching. Unfortunately, the group didn't have much time to stay here and enjoy the scenery. Wang Lu's schedule was very tight. When they arrived at Heaven's Road City, it happened to be the day when the mysterious Sky Mansion's merchant fleet was about to set sail to the western continent. Today, about half of the trade between the east and west continents was controlled by the mysterious Sky Mansion and its various chambers of commerce. After all, only a behemoth like the mysterious Sky Mansion had enough resources and manpower to organize cross-continent trade. The endless sea's deadly fog, as well as the endless sea monsters and demons, were not something that an ordinary chamber of commerce could deal with. Through the many years of cooperation between the Wisdom Sect and the mysterious Sky Mansion, Wang Lu successfully contacted the mysterious Sky Mansion's branch in Heaven's Road City. He made an appointment with the branch's fleet to set sail together with the merchant fleet to the western continent. This kind of fleet only sailed 2 or 3 times a year. If they missed this opportunity, they would have to wait for a few months. In addition to the mysterious Sky Mansion's fleet, although there were many other cargo ships, safety and other issues were difficult to guarantee. Through the contact information sent by the mysterious Sky Mansion, Wang Lu and the others found the captain of the fleet at the dock and were ready to set sail. However, as every seasoned adventurer was familiar with the law, in any adventure most of the time was used to deal with unexpected situations. Wang Lu and the others just happened to encounter an unexpected situation. In short, you want to raise the price? The original agreement of 1,000 spirit stones is not enough for you? On the dock, facing the warm and humid sea breeze, Wang Lu smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in his smile. Standing in front of Wang Lu was a burly middle-aged man with dark red skin and luxuriously dressed clothes. He was the person in charge of the fleet, Nie Yang. As the vice president of the mysterious Sky Mansion Sky Road City branch, Nie Yang had a very high status in Sky Road City. At the same time, he also had a good cultivation on the immortal Tao. Normal cultivators would treat him with respect when they saw him, but when Wang Lu looked at him with a cold gaze, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat and panic in his heart. Perhaps it's not wrong to say that they're trying to raise the price. In the end, Nie Yang was used to big storms and waves, so he calmed his mind and explained, but we really have no choice. Recently, the endless sea suddenly changed and the risk has doubled. In order to deal with the risk, the fleet has made a lot of arrangements, and the cost of sailing has increased exponentially. The original agreement of 1,000 spirit stones is really not enough, so we had to put down our pride and raise the price. In fact, the price of 3,000 spirit stones is not enough to cover the cost. Wang Lu had no intention to calculate the cost with the other side. Instead, he sneered and said, "If there is no risk in the trade between the east and west continents, why would it be your turn to do it? You are businessmen, so you should understand the spirit of the contract." Nie Yang said, "The contract also stipulates that if force majeure occurs, we have the right to adjust the price." "Yes, and the definition of force majeure is also up to you to interpret." Nie Yang said, "Please believe that we absolutely do not intend to blackmail you, but we really have no choice. This kind of thing is also detrimental to the reputation of our mysterious Sky Mansion. If not for the fleet that set off from West Port some time ago, stirring up monstrous waves on the endless sea, we would not have to do this. In fact, there are not many fleets that are willing to go to the sea now. Seeing that Nie Yang refused to budge no matter what, insisting on tripling the already high fare, Wang Lu deeply frowned. Of course, he didn't care about a few thousand spirit stones. Perhaps it was a huge amount of money for ordinary cultivators, but his net worth was incalculable. Thousands of spirit stones were just like pocket money to him. But he really didn't like people raising the price. However, Nie Yang's temporary price increase was also reasonable in the contract. If it's difficult, it's better not to follow his fleet. In the silence, standing behind Wang Lu, a girl in a gray robe softly said. Wang Lu shook his head. The endless sea is vast and boundless, and the changes are endless. It's not unusual to encounter any situation on the sea. Without a skilled fleet to guide us, it's really difficult to cross the sea. The girl said, it's not that difficult. When I came from the Western continent, I crossed the sea alone. At that time, I didn't find a suitable fleet. Wang Lu was surprised. Crossing the sea alone? You swam here? The girl said, I have the spirit's blessing, so I can walk freely on the water, so I came here directly. Of course, occasionally encountering tsunamis and huge waves will be more troublesome, but generally speaking, as long as I aim straight to the east, I will eventually reach my destination. Wang Lu sighed inwardly. No wonder not long after you arrived in 9 regions, King deserve it. Wang Lu had nothing to say. However, upon hearing the girl's words, Nie Yang inwardly disagreed and persuaded, it's true that brilliant cultivators can fly for a long time, but even if we don't consider the direction at sea, the giant monsters lurking in the sea are no small matter. Legend has it that even a Taoist master of Yuanying stage can't resist them. If we don't follow the fleet, it would be troublesome if we encounter the sea monsters. Wang Lu was also curious, so he asked, Aya, did you encounter a sea monster attack? Of course, but they were all expelled by me. However, there are indeed many strong people in the sea, so I occasionally feel uncomfortable when I fight them. When Aya crossed the sea, in theory her strength was close to that of a Unity stage cultivator. But since she still felt uncomfortable, it was not something that Wang Lu's team could deal with head-on. That being the case, then let's get on the ship. Wang Lu shrugged. After paying half of the fare, Wang Lu and the others boarded the fleet. Nie Yang, the person in charge of the fleet, personally led them into the 5 superior rooms on the pilot ship. The rooms of Wang Lu and the others were specially modified. They were luxuriously decorated and spacious, occupying almost the entire floor of the huge pilot ship. There were only 6 empty rooms on that floor, 5 of which were occupied by Wang Lu and the others, leaving only 1 empty room. In fact, this was the main reason for the huge fare. Otherwise, how could a few travelers cost thousands of spirit stones? Shortly after the fleet set sail, Nie Yang eagerly came to find Wang Lu. On one hand, he hurriedly expressed his apologies, and on the other hand he introduced them to a special neighbor. In this cabin, in addition to Wang Lu and the others, there was only one other passenger, and that was the one who followed behind Nie Yang. This is our navigator Ayun. With a warm smile, Nie Yang pushed the girl next to him forward. She is our biggest guarantee of safety on this trip to the Western continent. Wang Lu was a bit surprised to size up the girl named Ayun. She looked only 13 or 14 years old, a bit like a mixed race. Her facial features combined the characteristics of both the Eastern and Western continents. The girl had long hair like a cloud, and her skin was white and ruddy, completely unlike the weathered sea people. At the same time, the girl's dress was also luxurious. Her whole body was spotless, and her short skirt was woven with the best spirit silk, which wrapped her tender but curvy body. Her limbs were exposed, and her wrists and ankles were adorned with precious jade bracelets. Around her delicate neck, there were 2 necklaces. One was a string of neat and clean shells, and the other was a string of huge round pearls. Most of the trivial jewelry contained a faint immortal spirit aura, which was definitely not a mortal object. Wang Lu carefully looked at the girl in front of him. At the same time, the girl also raised her eyes, looked at Wang Lu, and slightly nodded to him. Her posture was calm and generous, completely unlike a 13 or 14-year-old girl who was ignorant of the world. While nodding, Wang Lu saw that behind the girl's ear, there seemed to be a few pieces of scale-like thing growing. Nie Yang noticed Wang Lu's gaze, so he smiled and said, Ayun is a member of the Sea Tribe, the most professional navigator of the endless sea. Sea Tribe? Yes, legend has it that they are blessed by the heaven and earth. They were born in the endless sea, and have a unique perception and affinity to this treacherous sea. As we all know, the endless sea is unpredictable, and even the most seasoned sailor cannot predict what will happen in the next moment. But the Sea Tribe are keenly aware of the changes in the sea, and can warn in advance. Similarly, the vicious beasts living in the sea usually do not attack the ships of the Sea Tribe. Therefore, as long as there is a Sea Tribe navigator in the fleet, the danger of the endless sea will be reduced by 90%. Of course, with such ability the price is naturally high. Don't look at Ayun's weak and timid appearance if you want to invite her, it is impossible. Nie Yang stretched out his hand and gestured twice, indicating 10,000 spirit stones. Wang Lu nodded, indicating that he understood. Nie Yang bringing Ayun to see them was obviously to explain why he raised the price. 10,000 spirit stones, TSK. Generally speaking, a fleet of ships can make a profit of tens of thousands of spirit stones. This was a business that risked one's life to do. But the Sea Tribe girl only needed to go out to sea to earn 10,000 spirit stones. Sure enough, knowledge is power. Nie Yang patted Ayun's shoulder and sighed with emotion. Under normal circumstances, we will not ask the Sea Tribe to come out. But some time ago the fleet of West Tomb Port encountered sea beasts. The fleet carried many powerful cultivators. Relying on their strength, they didn't put down their offerings as usual and instead fought with the sea beasts. As a result, alas, the bandit-like sea beasts were wiped out, but they also provoked the anger of the vicious beasts in the sea. After the fleet passed through, the entire endless sea was not peaceful. Before that, 3 fleets were attacked by angry sea beasts and were completely wiped out. Now, without a Sea Tribe navigator, no one dares to go out to sea. Wang Lu waved his hand. Alright, I know we don't need to spend money. We have already paid the down payment, and when we arrive at the destination, we will naturally pay the rest. Are you afraid that we will default on the payment? We are very strict with the spirit of the contract. We will not casually use force majeure as an excuse to change the contract. Nie Yang naturally smiled bitterly, and after a moment he left with Ayun. Wang Lu watched Ayun's delicate and exquisite back gradually fade away, sighing in his heart. The West Tomb Port's fleet. Wasn't it the excavation management's fleet, led by Feng Yin Taoist master, with a particularly luxurious lineup, nicknamed the Dream Team? But in the end, it was simply a dream team. They had fought to their heart's content in the beginning, but they had left behind a terrible mess that implicated their descendants. He could only hope that the extra 2,000 spirit stones were worth it. Chapter 282. The days at sea were leisurely and comfortable. According to the scheduled voyage, Wang Lu and the others would arrive at the eastern port of the western continent after a month at sea. This speed was already quite fast. Without the guidance of the sea race girl Ayun, in order to ensure their safety, the fleet would likely spend several times more time to find a safe route on the ocean. Most of the time at sea was spent leisurely. After leaving 9 regions, the surrounding spiritual energy gradually changed, making it difficult for them to support their cultivation. Although it wouldn't cause them to lose their cultivation base, it was difficult to increase their cultivation base through meditation. Therefore, in addition to occasionally practicing their swordsmanship, most of the time was simply used for leisure. The life at sea was very fresh for them. Considering that they would likely face a difficult test after entering the Western continent, they might as well take this opportunity to relax and adjust their state. Among the several people, Luli was the happiest. She grew up in the Blue River region of Spirit Sword Mountain and had never seen the sea. However, for her, who was simple in mind, the boundless sea was not boring at all. Instead, it contained endless fun. Every day she ran back and forth on the deck, sometimes flying on her flying sword, braving the wind and breaking the waves not far from the fleet. As for Bai Shixian and Quan Zhuhua, most of the time they were quietly sleeping in the guest room. Perhaps it was because their bodies as immortal beasts couldn't adapt to the change of the continent's laws as quickly as human beings, so they needed a period of recuperation. As for Aya, she obviously had a strong interest in the sea race girl Ayun. She often took the initiative to talk to her, asking about all kinds of anecdotes about the sea race. Unfortunately, Ayun's response was very cold. Most of the time, she locked herself in her room. Occasionally when she came out to breathe, she also ignored people. After being rebuffed several times, Aya could only suppress her curiosity. However, in the end she couldn't help it, so she seemed particularly uncomfortable. Wang Lu, who was watching from the side, shook his head and said to Aya, "Your way of asking questions is wrong. No wonder she doesn't like to talk to you." Aya earnestly recalled, "Did I do something rude? I'm sorry, I don't know much about the sea race, so if there's anything wrong, please advise me." Wang Lu said, "I'll give you a demonstration, then you'll know where you're lacking." Then Wang Lu brought Aya to a Yun's room and gently knocked on the door. The sea race girl coldly stood at the door and looked at Wang Lu. Her eyes revealed a questioning look. Wang Lu smiled and said, "I have some questions for you, 100 spirit stones per question, interested?" Yun thought for a moment and moved aside to let the door open. He then waved his hand and said softly, "Please come in." Outside the room, Aya didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't know if she was depressed or impressed. Wang Lu threw a mustard seed bag filled with thousands of spirit stones to Aya and said, "You can ask all you want, I'm going to the deck to get some fresh air." After a while, Aya reluctantly brought the empty mustard seed bag to the deck and approached Wang Lu. "Thank you. You're welcome." The two were silent for a moment. Aya smiled and asked, "Do you know a lot about the sea race?" Wang Lu shrugged his shoulders. "Not many. This is the first time I've seen a living sea race member." Aya asked, "So, are you good at judging people?" Wang Lu nodded. "Judging people? Not bad." Then he looked at Aya and said, "A cup, right?" If it weren't for the fact that Aya's body was still unstable, she would have already started fighting. Even so, Aya was still angry. Her face was extremely gloomy, hidden under the hood, like a dark cloud that was about to fall. However, at this moment, Aya's expression suddenly changed. Just as he was feeling bewildered, a barefoot young woman sprinted to the deck. She was gasping for breath, and her face was gloomy and uncertain. Wang Lu stretched out his hand and said, "Ayun?" However, Ayun didn't seem to see Wang Lu at all. He just ran straight to the side of the ship, clung to the edge of the ship with both hands, and stood on tiptoe to make his upper body as high as possible. His vision was cast into the distance of the vast ocean. His eyes looked around and his expression was full of panic. Wang Lu then turned his gaze, only to see that the left side of the pilot ship was calm. The warm sunlight sprinkled on the sea, like a layer of fragmented gold. "Is this urgent?" Aya took half a step forward, patted Wang Lu on the shoulder, and said with a sinking voice, "Be careful, something is coming." A moment later, even the person in charge of the fleet, Nye Yang, came up and asked anxiously, "Ayun, what's wrong?" Ayun turned her head, her eyes filled with tears. The little girl nodded vigorously, then shook her head, but she didn't know what she meant. But then, without her explanation, everyone realized that a great disaster was about to befall them. The calm sea rose without warning, as if a towering mountain had risen from the flat land. A black mound suddenly rose from the side of the ship. The next moment, the sea turned into a waterfall and fell along the edge of the mound, revealing a ferocious giant beast. It was an extremely large sea beast with an inestimable size. It had a round head and a hard, grayish-black shell. Below its head were dozens of tentacles, each of which was dozens of feet long. As the giant beast appeared, the tentacles slapped the surface of the sea, stirring up stormy waves, showing its great strength. Any one of these tentacles could crush the pilot ship into pieces. My God, such a big octopus. Seeing this amazing giant beast, Wang Lu was also shocked and involuntarily swallowed. The endless sea was full of dangers. He was tired of hearing this sentence in 9 regions. However, when he actually encountered it, it was still horrifying. Sea beast, it's a sea beast. Before long, the whole fleet fell into panic. The sailors' screams rose and fell one after another. Under the panic, the fleet quickly lost control, and the originally neat formation suddenly became chaotic. Looking at the sea beast that emerged from the water in the distance, Nye Yang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His well-maintained snow-white teeth were immediately bitten until they bled. "Ayun, what's going on?" Ayun's eyes wandered. Obviously, she didn't expect that there would be an uninvited guest on the supposedly peaceful route. As a member of the sea tribe, she had a basic sense of everything on the sea before going out to sea. Then, she could communicate with the creatures in the sea at any time to avoid those hostile sea beasts and storm-covered areas, and choose a peaceful area to advance. Just half a day ago, she had just completed a sensing and confirmed that there were no sea beasts wandering nearby. Why did such a big guy suddenly appear? Perhaps, ordinary sea tribe people might not even meet one in their lifetime. At this moment, everyone in the fleet felt a bone-piercing chill from the bottom of their hearts. It was as if they were going to be frozen. The next moment, a thunderous roar swept through the ship. Many sailors with mortal physiques immediately bled from their ears and fainted. Even Ye Yang screamed as his breathing became chaotic due to the roar. Wang Lu and others were not hurt by the sound waves, but after the roar, Wang Lu couldn't help but frown, because he felt that the sea beast seemed to be saying something. It said that it smelled our scent from thousands of miles away, so it immediately rushed over. It also said that it has been waiting for this moment for a long time. Bai Shishuan's voice faintly sounded in his primordial spirit, translating for him. Wang Lu was surprised. Little Bai, you can understand it? It's probably because it's a beast. Bai Shishuan somewhat self-deprecatingly said, it seems to be seeking revenge. Damn, when did we become enemies? Is it because we ate mustard octopus for lunch? At the same time, Ayun, who was clinging to the side of the ship, suddenly moved. Although the girl's face turned red and white, obviously not feeling well, she successfully resisted the shock of the sound waves. She stood firm, looked back strangely at Wang Lu and others, and then suddenly grabbed the plank of the ship and jumped up, seemingly wanting to jump over the ship and into the sea. Aya reacted the fastest, stepped forward to hold the girl down, and warned, the sea is more dangerous. We will do our best to protect you here. Ayun struggled hard, constantly trying to get closer to the side of the ship, and screamed, let me go, let me go. Calm down. Aya stretched out her hand and firmly suppressed Ayun. Although she was less than 1/10,000th of her peak, she could easily suppress an ordinary girl. No matter how hard Ayun struggled, she couldn't get away. What are you doing? At this time, Nyeyang slowly came back to his senses and exclaimed, let her go. Otherwise all of us will die. What? At this time, the sea beast had finished its opening remarks and was rushing forward with all its strength. Nyeyang said in horror, let her go. Otherwise we will all die. She is the most important sacrifice to quell the anger of the sea god. What? Sacrifice? Whether it was Aya, Wang Lu or Bai Shishuan, none of them were stupid. They immediately understood Nyeyang's explanation. No wonder the price of the sea race was so high. No wonder the little girl was covered with jewels and dressed herself as if she was going to be buried. It turned out that in addition to the navigation task, the sea race was the last insurance for the fleet. In case of a shipwreck, such as a sea beast attack or a storm, the sea race could sacrifice themselves as a sacrifice to the endless sea to quell the anger of the sea. The sea race have already made up their minds before going out to sea. If you stop her, you will only drag everyone down with you. Even Ayun himself will be ashamed. Let her go, it's too late. Nyeyang roared and made a final effort. Aya, on the other hand, calmed herself down and said to Wang Lu through primordial spirit communication, Wang Lu, help me save her. Wang Lu was surprised. Help you save her? Then he pointed to the octopus sea monster. Are you saying you want me to fight this kind of question mark monster alone? After a pause, Wang Lu said, Aya, don't be such a saint. Although Ayun is indeed very pitiful, this is her duty, her destiny, and her consciousness. Everyone will die one day, don't take everything on yourself. Aya said, this is not taking everything on myself. The sea beast is coming for me. 100 years ago when I crossed the endless sea, I encountered it and seriously injured it. Now it has recovered and is coming for revenge. Ayun is one of the most outstanding descendants of this generation of the sea race. Her perception and navigation will never be wrong. If it weren't for me, she wouldn't have encountered this kind of fatal situation. I can't absolve myself from the blame, so it is my duty to rescue her. But I don't have enough strength now. Wang Lu was shocked. Aya, do you really have to value a lover over a friend? Ayun's life isn't meant to end, so I deserve to die? Aya quickly explained, I know this sea beast can't stop you. You have been preparing for so long on the mountain. Although there will be a price, but I beg you. Wang Lu helplessly said with a smile, since you've said it like this, then I'll go forward bravely. After all, I promised you that I would be invincible. Let's just treat this as our first battle. Aya nodded. Thank you. Although my strength is meager, I will do my best to fight side by side with you. Fight side by side? That won't be necessary. Wang Lu said and cut off the primordial spirit communication. At this time, the sea monster had already rushed to the side of the pilot ship. Then Wang Lu calmly took out something from his mustard seed bag and raised it in the air. It was a spirit sword heavenly talisman, but it was obviously different from ordinary heavenly talismans. The talisman light flashed and a white figure appeared from the light. The next moment, a layer of emerald green light cover enveloped the entire pilot ship. When the giant beast hit the light cover, its mountain-like body was bounced back and fell into the sea. TSK, it hasn't been long since we left, but you already called for outside assistance. Little Lu, can you do it? The voice in midair was a bit concerned and a bit teasing. If it wasn't Wang Wu, who else could it be? Chapter 283. Transforming the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman to achieve the reverse transmission effect was one of the most powerful cards in Wang Lu's trip to the west. The spirit sword heavenly talisman was not bound to herself, but to her beloved master. Once she was in danger, she could activate the talisman with her master's magical power and send her over. Generally speaking, most of the sects would leave this life-saving means for their elite disciples, which could be used to call the elders for help at the critical moment. However, once they left 9 regions because of the change in the law, these talismans would be difficult to take effect. Only the spirit sword heavenly talisman could ignore the change in the law of the continent. However, according to her master, because she had transformed the talisman, the transmission effect was not permanent. It could only bring her master over for a cup of tea's time at most. Moreover, the law of the endless sea was ever-changing, so the transmission time was even shorter. However, no matter how short the time was, it was enough for this powerful summoned beast to clear the battlefield. Although Nanfei's method was famous for being good at defense and bad at offense, people who were familiar with Wang Wu must know that the general principle was completely ineffective against her. This time the battle was even more appalling. In just a few breaths of time, Wang Wu had wrapped the vengeful angry octopus with an emerald green sword light, and then carried it back to Nanfei's peak through the channel opened by the spirit sword heavenly talisman, leaving only a string of hearty laughter echoing on the sea. Ha ha! Alas! Watching his master's back disappear into the channel opened by the spirit sword heavenly talisman, Wang Lu sighed deeply. Aya, who was beside him, was still secretly shocked by the battle just now. After a moment of silence, she asked, "What's wrong? Why do you sigh?" "I'm worried about master." Aya was even more curious. "Worried about your master?" "She has an overwhelming advantage just now, not to mention returning to Spirit Sword Mountain is her home field, so there's no danger at all." Wang Lu said, "I'm worried that she, a leftover woman who has been single for more than 100 years, would carry such a big tentacle monster back. Under her insatiable desire, she might do something immoral and damage the reputation of my spirit sword sect." "Your thinking itself has already hurt the reputation of Lingjian school." Aya couldn't bear it anymore. But very quickly she changed her mind and thought, "It's because that talisman is very valuable, right? Is your heart aching?" Wang Lu shrugged. "It's not bad. If I sell it, I can probably get a few 100,000 spirit stones." As soon as these words came out, not to mention Aya's surprise, Nie Yang exclaimed, "Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. This is throwing money at them." The value of this entire fleet was no more than hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. After all, the fleet itself was still stuck in the mortal world, which was a world of difference from the top immortal level ships of the mysterious Sky Mansion. Wang Lu's spirit sword heavenly talisman was equivalent to making a fleet disappear. Thinking of this, Nie Yang lamented, "This is too wasteful." Waste? Wang Lu keenly captured Nie Yang's meaning and could not help but frown. Nie Yang looked at Ayun, who had just escaped from death, and shook his head. "Young master has a kind heart and can't bear to see Ayun buried in the sea. This kind heart is indeed touching, but the fate of the sea tribe is like this. Even if they can escape this time, one day they will walk on the same path. And the hundreds and thousands of people of the sea tribe make a living, all of them disregard their lives. Can young master be so generous to save people every time? Alas, although my words are cruel, young master's action really doesn't have much meaning." Wang Lu smiled and said, "The beauty of rich people is that they can always use money to do meaningless things. On the other hand, if you can't spend money to do meaningless things, why are you a rich person?" Nie Yang was stunned for a moment, then sighed with emotion and didn't say anything more. Wang Lu cast a glance at Aya and meaningfully said, "Rich people are like this, but isn't it the same for those with power? If you don't do things that others think are meaningless, what's the use of money and power?" Aya couldn't agree, "That's just a pointless show-off and waste. It's not the right way. In fact, no matter which continent, there is no custom that advocates waste." "Hey Aya, you're too naive." "Naive?" Aya sneered and even disdained to refute. Even though she had experienced great setbacks, she was still a proud queen. Naive? Wang Lu didn't have the qualification to evaluate her like that. However, Wang Lu didn't intend to say anything. Seeing that Aya ignored him, he kept his mouth shut. Aya paused and asked Nie Yang, "Will we leave any future trouble for you after we repel that sea beast?" Nie Yang replied, "There won't be any future trouble. That giant octopus obviously acted alone, so no one will come to seek revenge after we killed it. That day the West Hill fleet killed a group of sea beasts, which made the sea god angry. At worst, we'll stay in the western continent port for a while and then return." It's good that there won't be any future trouble." Aya finally felt relieved. As she spoke, although she did not say it clearly, her body, which was originally wavering between real and illusory, gradually solidified. Later on there were no similar accidents. Under Ayun's almost perfect navigation, the fleet bypassed all the risks in the endless sea and safely arrived at their destination, the port city on the east coast of the western continent. Nie Yang led the fleet to unload and rest at the port, while Wang Lu and the others went ashore, ready to start a new adventure. Before leaving, Ayun took off her 2 necklaces and gave them to Wang Lu and Aya. The more expensive pearl necklace was given to Aya, and the shell necklace was given to Wang Lu. Obviously, although the little girl was taciturn, she clearly knew who gave her life. At first, Aya insisted on refusing it. After all, that octopus came for her. However, Ayun was unusually firm. She kept kowtowing on the ground. Finally, Aya took a step back and divided the pearl necklace into 2, only taking one, which made Ayun reluctantly nod. After saying goodbye to Ayun, the group entered the port city of Deep Earth City. As one of the trade hubs between the East and West continent, Deep Earth City was no less prosperous than Heaven's Road. The city was also full of high-rise buildings and traffic. The unique culture of the Western continent was too much to take in. However, what really caught people's attention was the law of the Western continent. For the natives of the Western continent, this so-called law was invisible and colorless, silently moisturizing. However, for the cultivators from 9 regions, this law, which was very different from the 9 regions, made people feel particularly uncomfortable. It was like creatures that were used to running on land were suddenly sunk into the sea, or fish in the water were dragged ashore. The great change in the environment was simply suffocating. This was the wall of law, which prevented most cultivators from going to the Western continent. Cultivators below the level of King Pill could hardly pass through the wall of law to display the various magical abilities that they cultivated in the 9 regions. Even the strength of their bodies was greatly reduced. During this period, it was even more difficult for them to cultivate, making them completely useless. Generally speaking, only cultivators above the level of King Pill could retain their cultivation base after crossing the sea. Because when they advanced to the level of King Pill, they would condense the main path on the King Pill, so that their jade mansion would be unified like a small world, endlessly growing and multiplying, without the need for external force. However, even if it was a cultivator above the level of King Pill, if their foundation was not solid enough, they would also be weakened by the wall of law. Only those at the nascent soul stage or soul formation stage could completely ignore the influence of the wall of laws, because at that level, cultivators would have great comprehension and integration abilities. Even if they were in a strange environment, they would be able to use their own abilities to deduce and adapt to new laws. Among Wang Lu and the others, only Bai Shen could barely be called King Pill level. Wang Lu and Lu Li were still in Shudan stage. However, as successor disciples of Lingjian school, their foundation was deep, so they didn't really care about the wall of law. In particular, Lu Li was the fastest to adapt. Soon after they disembarked from the boat, she gradually adapted to the law of the Western continent. Although the flying sword in her sleeve was somewhat sluggish and erratic, she could basically revolve around her as she pleased. Wang Lu cultivated non-phase method, so his magical power was restrained, not revealing anything. Walking in the Deep Earth City, he looked calm and composed, except that occasionally he would stop for half a step to adjust his breath. According to Master, before the King Pill is formed, there's no harm in seeing more laws. And under the suppression of the law of the Western continent, persevering in cultivation would yield twice the result with half the effort. Aya and Wang Lu walked side by side at the front of the team. Listening to Wang Lu's words, she couldn't help but nod. You are indeed more hardworking than you look. No wonder you have such achievements in just 10 years of cultivation. Wang Lu said, genius is 99% IQ plus 1% inspiration. Hey, it seems like there's no place for sweat? Aya couldn't help but laugh. Wang Lu said, it seems like you're in good condition now? After all, this is the land I'm familiar with. Here, I can feel that my strength is slowly recovering. Aya closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and then softly said, I'm back. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu gawked and then frowned. Are you going to eat first or eat me first? Under the guidance of the native Aya, the group found a small shop in Deep Earth City, but it was a shop with a hidden mystery. According to Aya's introduction, this was a branch of a secret chamber of commerce with tentacles all over the eastern part of the Western continent. With a special seal, she gained the trust of the owner and saw a special purchase list in the basement. Then Wang Lu bought a high-end carriage with a large amount of gold and other hard currency that he had prepared in 9 regions. The carriage was pulled by several nightmarish beasts that tread on flames. Their speed was astonishingly fast, and when needed they could fly into the sky or burrow into the ground. Moreover, the interior of the carriage was also transformed by the spell of the Western continent, making it very spacious, which was similar to Wang Lu's private bus, Lingyun 2009 regions. The purchase of the carriage was to facilitate travel. In the Western continent, many of the magical treasures refined by 9 regions were difficult to use. Moreover, in order to be less conspicuous, it was best to disguise as a local traveler. After coming out of the shop, the group boarded the carriage and headed west. According to the plan, they would stay in the next city for a while and then go straight to Taobao. Chapter 284. 2 majestic nightmare beasts pulled an exquisite and luxurious carriage along the smooth and tidy road outside Deep Earth City, heading straight to the capital of the largest trading kingdom in the east. Although the eastern kingdom was vast, the nightmare beasts traveled like flying. In less than half a day they could cross thousands of miles to reach the capital. At that time, the people in the carriage would make their final preparations and go straight to the most famous historical site in the Western continent. Generally speaking, even in the relatively affluent eastern part of the Western continent, such a carriage was rare. The 2 nightmare beasts pulling the carriage were extraordinary. As for the wheels that were vaguely surrounded by lightning, it showed that the owner's life experience was extraordinary. Usually only the city masters of those big cities could own such a carriage. Even though the carriage was light and did not have any guards accompanying it, there were very few people who dared to try and intercept it as it traveled through the wilderness. The eastern part of the Western continent, because of its abundance of resources and prosperous trade, was much better than the western part, and the crackdown on crime was also more severe. In particular, the governors of the various countries and cities were in close contact with each other. Once they offended a high-ranking official, they would become a street rat wherever they went. Wang Lu and his team did not hesitate to buy the carriage in order to avoid trouble. However, perhaps it was really destined that the road to happiness was strewn with setbacks. Shortly after the carriage left Deep Earth City, they encountered a group of robbers. The strength of the robbers who dared to attack the carriage pulled by the nightmare beasts was naturally extraordinary. Before the people in the carriage could react, the sky suddenly turned blood red, and the smooth road ahead was lost in a red mist. In the sky, 10 hazy silhouettes floated quietly, looking down from above. The next moment, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The blood-colored lightning fell from the sky and bombarded the roof of the carriage. The strange beast statue on the roof collapsed into pieces, and at the same time, the body of the carriage violently shook. Inside the carriage, Wang Lu and the others were surprised. This ambush was fast and ruthless. The blood-colored lightning strike destroyed the protective statue on the carriage. Its power was not inferior to. Well, if converted to 9 regions standard, it was the full power strike of Taoist Master King Pil, Xiaoming. Although the carriage was luxurious, it was not a chariot. There were only 3 protective statues on the roof, and they could not be regenerated. Wang Lu raised his head and saw that not only did the thunderclouds above his head not dissipate, they were even denser. After the blood-colored thunderbolts struck down, blood rain began to fall, polluting everything in the world. Even if one only looked at this method, one could see that it was brilliant. It was hard to imagine that they had met random robbers. Wang Lu was surprised. "Aya, is this another enemy you made 100 years ago? Just how many outrageous things did you do in the past for you to have so many enemies? My enemies are everywhere on the sea and on the land." I was also very surprised. Being questioned by Wang Lu, she was tongue-tied for a long time before she said, "It wasn't me." "It's you? Don't quibble. If it wasn't you, could it be my enemy?" Aya found it hard to argue. "But I don't even know those people." "That's because you killed their parents in the past, and now their children and grandchildren have come to seek revenge." Aya was stunned, and then she actually began to ponder. In the past, when she went on expeditions in all directions, even though the direction of the horse's hooves were all righteous, she had indeed killed a lot of people. Could it be that? That's not right. My country is far away in the west, so how could there be someone who would travel thousands of miles to ambush me and seek revenge? It's really not me? Seeing that Aya was really angry, Wang Lu waved his hand. "Forget it, no matter if it's me or not, in any case they have come to my door, so I can't just not fight back. Aya, save your favorable impression so that you can see how amazing I am when I go out." With that, Wang Lu beckoned Lu Li and the others out of the carriage. At this time, the 3rd statue has been broken by the blood-colored thunderbolt, and the 4th thunderbolt was brewing, which could fall at any time. Wang Lu stepped out against the rain of blood outside the carriage. However, just as he took a step, he felt his body suddenly sank. A void core in his jade mansion violently shook, as if it was about to fall apart. What? At the same time Lu Li, who followed closely behind, also exclaimed, "My magical power is a bit disobedient? This is the law suppression?" Aya, who was at the back of the team, was the most sensitive. She immediately said, "These people used a special method to stimulate the law of the Western continent to fully suppress you. They are deliberately targeting the cultivators of 9 regions." Aya was indeed worthy to be the former king. Her reaction was fast and accurate. In just one sentence she revealed the truth. In fact, this group of robbers was indeed targeting the cultivators of 9 regions. Just as Aya revealed the truth, a person in the sky was surprised. "There's actually a local?" That person spoke in the common language of the eastern continent of the western continent. Before coming here, Wang Lu and the others had done their homework so they could understand it. Another person in the sky said, "Humph, so what if they're local? Since they're with the yellow-skinned monkey, they're obviously not good people. They don't seem to have any strength, so we can just kill them. Hee, this time we've caught a big fish. These people are not strong, but they're rich. We're going to get rich. Killing these yellow-skinned monkeys is really a shortcut to get rich. Although their strength is good, as long as we use this bloodstained scroll, we can make them reveal their true colors. Those 500 magic coins are really not a loss." In just a few words, Wang Lu wrinkled his brows. Someone in the western continent was specifically targeting the cultivators of 9 regions? They even developed this blood-stained scroll, which stimulated the law of the western continent to suppress them. This kind of suppression didn't matter to the local people of western continent, but it was very fatal to the people of 9 regions. Even those Taoist masters of the King Pill realm, when the blood-stained scroll stimulated the law of the western continent, would lose their Tao heart and lose their cultivation base. Perhaps only those old monsters with Yuanying stage or even deity stage could ignore the law and still exert their strength. However, nowadays the cultivators from 9 regions who came to western continent were mostly King Pill realm cultivators. Except for the dream team led by Feng Yin Taoist master, most of the teams formed by various sects were 1 or 2 Yuanying stage cultivators with more than 10 King Pill realm cultivators. Thus, when encountering this blood-stained scroll, 9 out of 10 of them would not be able to resist. Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The western continent was indeed full of capable people. He had never heard of this blood-stained scroll before. Obviously, after a large number of 9 regions cultivators entered the western continent, the genius alchemists of the western continent developed it and spread it everywhere. 500 magic coins was indeed not expensive. According to the same purchasing power, it could be converted into 500 spirit stones. Compared to the harvest of killing a group of 9 regions cultivators, it was simply a drop in the bucket, extremely cheap. The strength of the 10 people in the sky was not weak. According to the standard of the western continent, although they had different professions, they were all high-order professions such as sword master, spirit master, and so on. In 9 regions they were between Shudan stage and King Pill realm cultivators. 10 people together, coupled with the blood-stained scroll that scattered the opponent's cultivation base, not to mention Wang Lu's team, even if there was a Yuanying stage elder leading the team, with more than 10 King Pill realm cultivators here, they would still die. "Do it!" The person in the sky shouted and swooped down with a pair of pale golden wings on his back. That was the captain of this group of adventurers, a great sword master who was best at charging and breaking through enemy lines. Seeing that their captain had made his move, several of his teammates also followed suit. For a time, it was as if a dark cloud covered the sky. Their power was astonishing. Generally, the 9 regions cultivators team would immediately scatter under their charge, and then it would be a one-sided massacre. However, this time they really found the wrong person. Wang Lu and Lu Li were indeed temporarily troubled by the blood-stained scroll, but there was still a real killer in their team. "Ridiculous, you want to rely on numbers? I'm going to close the door and release the dog. Hey, eat him for me." As soon as Wang Lu's voice fell, a thunderous roar exploded, and a giant gray shadow suddenly expanded. 2 rows of blade-like teeth flashed in front of everyone's eyes. The next moment, the robbers who swooped down suddenly felt that there seemed to be one less person next to them. They looked at each other, and a moment later, their hearts were filled with horror. Captain?" The momentum of the robbers' dive came to an abrupt halt. One by one, the robbers stopped their momentum and hovered in mid-air. This time, there were 6 people who swooped down, and all of them were close combat professions. Originally, the victory was already in their grasp, but just now, the gray shadow flashed, and the captain who rushed at the front had disappeared. When they looked again, they saw on the ground, a giant dog with a body as strong as an elephant was chewing something. Blood and minced meat continued to overflow from the gap between its teeth and flowed to the ground. A moment later, that giant dog spat out a ball-like thing, which was the head of the captain who died with a remaining grievance. Captain? Several people's eyes widened in anger as if their eye sockets were about to tear. As a great swordmaster level captain, he had always been an invincible meat grinder in close combat. Unexpectedly at this moment, he was swallowed by that strange beast without even struggling. Damn it, whether it was these yellow-skinned monkeys of 9 regions, or their spirit beasts and spirit pets, under the blood-stained scroll, their cultivation base should have been scattered, and they should have no resistance at all. However, they didn't know that this raging evil beast was the condensation of the Western continent's natural law. Under the blood-stained scroll, its strength would only be stronger. And Fenrir was best at close combat. According to legend, even the gods did not dare to be too close to Fenrir. While the several sword masters and berserkers who specialized in close combat were still in shock, that giant dog had already digested the captain's body. It grinned, suddenly pounced into the air and once again began to fight. Its speed was so fast that people were completely unable to react. Its big mouth opened and closed and a person was swallowed whole, leaving no room for resistance. Several close combat professions tried to fight back, but their weapons hit the thick fur, but they were completely powerless. It was a one-sided massacre. Ah! Quickly help! A swordmaster screamed and roared for help. Just now he was too late to dodge and his arm was bitten off by that evil dog. He knew that this evil dog was absolutely invincible in close combat. At this time only the magician, priest, mage and other long-range professions in the sky could barely cope with it. The long-range professions naturally would not just stand by and watch. Each of them displayed their magical abilities. Some condensed the blood-colored thunder in the sky, some drew their bows and shot arrows with divine power, and some recited hymns to summon the wrath of the gods. If these long-range professions focused their fire, even if Quan Zohua was an immortal beast, it would not be able to withstand it. After all, its cultivation time was too short. However, at this time, a clear woman's voice leisurely floated through his mind. Although the swordmaster did not understand the language used by the woman, he inexplicably understood her meaning. Yes, I have understood the law of this land. The woman in white floated forward and stretched out her hand to prop up a thick brown earth light, which isolated all the attacks from the sky. The eyes of Mother Earth are watching us. The next moment, the woman flipped her other hand and aimed at the sky. In the palm of her hand, the roaring thunder symbolizing destruction rolled and jumped. The power of the elements will destroy you. Chapter 285. An angry roar of thunder bloomed from Baishirshwan's hand, which turned into a raging storm that pierced the sky. The 4 long-range professions in the sky were all shrouded in lightning. The strength of those 4 long-range professions was not weak, but no one expected that this group of Eastern cultivators, under the suppression of the blood-stained scroll, still had the strength to resist. Therefore they didn't do too much protection and put all of their power into the attack. At this time they were suddenly counterattacked, completely caught off guard. Moreover, what shocked them even more was Baishirshwan's counterattack. That was by no means the means of any Eastern cultivator. These days they have intercepted and killed some Eastern adventurers and some won and some lost. However, in any case, they had already seen the means of Eastern cultivators, which was completely different from the mystical power of the Western continent. Among them, although there was no lack of means to summon lightning, it was absolutely not like now, where the lightning storm was filled with a strong elemental force. This elemental taste was clearly, damn it, how could it be an elemental shaman? Moreover, it's a high-level shaman. The magician angrily clenched his wand. The magical pool in his body crazily poured out power to support a thick and plain insulating shield. At the risk of damaging his magical pool, he was finally able to isolate all of the lightning energy outside. However, his companion was not so lucky. The archer has no self-defense ability. In the face of the elemental force, the only thing he could rely on was the magician and priest. However, they were too busy to take care of the archer. Unprepared, he could only try his best to flap the wings on his back, trying to retreat. However, just as he flapped his wings, his torso was pierced by the electric current, and he screamed and fell down. The other mage also didn't escape. She was good at summoning and needed time, but she was caught off guard and lacked the time. While the magician and priest were busy with other things, the magic item she carried was not enough to resist Baishirshwan's lightning storm. After struggling for a moment, the magic item shattered with a loud bang. The mage herself was also engulfed by the lightning. "Aka, save me?" Accompanied by a scream, the mage turned into ashes. Aka, who was called out by her before she died, was holding his wand, trying to alleviate the shock of the magical pool. He didn't even dare to say half a word, for fear that he would not be able to suppress the backlash and explode his magical pool. However, as one of the only two members in the team who could buff and protect his teammates, he didn't help, which worsened the situation. By the time the lightning storm subsided, more than half of the 10-man adventurer team had died. Magician Akka struggled to stay in the air. He felt dizzy and could not believe what he was seeing. Although the 10 of them didn't dare to say that they were influential figures in the Western continent, they were still accustomed to the wind and waves. A few years ago they even dared to go to the Dragon Cave to explore for treasures. Unexpectedly they were defeated here. However, at least I'm still alive. The mage Akka composed himself and looked at the priest who believed in the holy light beside him. The two of them were the only ones in the team who still had strength left and were not completely trapped in the battle. They looked at each other and had the same thought: if we want to escape, now is the time. Years of tacit understanding made it unnecessary for them to speak more. The priest immediately overdrew his faith and released 2 holy shields to bless both of them. Then the magician stimulated the mana pool and added a pair of wings for each of them, ready to spread the wings and fly away. This was their only chance. That ferocious beast was fighting with the remaining 2 melee professions. Although it had the upper hand, it was still wounded by the explosion of its teammates before their death. And that terrifying high-order elemental shaman, after releasing the lightning storm, also fell into a state of paralysis due to the overload. The others were either still trapped by the bloodstained scroll or didn't have the means of long-range attack, so there was nothing to worry about. It was just that, what the hell, how could these Easterners have the means of Western continent people? If they knew that among this group of people, there was a strange beast that could not be restricted by the bloodstained scroll, a high-order elemental shaman, no matter what, they would have been prepared in advance. How could they fall into the situation where half of their people died? The great wizard who sold the bloodstained scroll claimed that as long as they didn't provoke the legendary level Eastern cultivator, with the bloodstained scroll, it was enough to sweep everything. But now that was not the case at all. They were really fooled. With a strong sense of confusion and anger, the magician aka began to flap his wings, bringing a strong gust of wind, carrying him to a higher and farther place to escape. While flying, he began to think about how to take revenge. As the wise man of the team, he didn't have to always be in the front like the captain, but when the captain fell, he was duty-bound to take revenge. This group of Eastern cultivators, in terms of strength alone, was not too strong. The team's failure was because they were caught off guard. So, as long as they went back to regroup and recruit a few high-order professions with the same strength, they could still defeat the opponent. After all, the other party could only threaten one person and one beast. And at that time, the pain that he had suffered today he would inflict 10 times, 100 times more on these Easterners. However, just as the magician secretly swore, a cold voice came into his ears. Offended the abbot and still want to leave? The magician was startled. He didn't have time to think about where the voice came from. He urged his wings with all his strength, crazily flying into the sky like an arrow. However, after flapping his wings twice, he found something strange. The blood cloud above his head seemed to be a bit different than before. The patter of blood rain had also stopped at some point in time. The effect of the bloodstained scroll had disappeared? It shouldn't be, only less than a third of the time had passed. Aka, we seem to be trapped, my connection with the holy light has been cut off. The priest companion's slightly panicked voice also sounded at this time. As a high-order profession, the priest's soul had long been inextricably linked with the sea of holy light that he believed in, but at this time he felt that this connection had been cut off. Fortunately, this was not the first time this kind of experience had happened. When entering some special space, the original connection may be cut off, but as long as one prayed again, the connection could be re-established. But the question was, when did they enter a special space? Aka, what's going on? The magician's face was gloomy. Using his wand as a medium, he released a few spells to explore the surroundings. He said coldly, we are trapped, it's a spell similar to the maze spell. This is no longer the space we were in before. With that, he turned around and looked down at the ground. The original clean stone path and the elegant scenery on both sides were gone, replaced by a broken land. Thousands of broken swords stood erect on the ground like tombstones. The sky and clouds overhead were still the color of blood, but it was different from the dark and terrifying color of the blood-stained scroll. It was more of a heroic color. Obviously, this was no longer the original space. Welcome to my world. Hey, It's really not easy to launch one's original magical ability in the Western continent. Fortunately, your Western continent also has a similar method. Finally, I found it. At this time, Wang Lu was completely different from the time when he was suppressed by the bloodstained scroll, where he couldn't control his magical power. In the forest of swords he calmly walked. Each step just happened to step on the gap between the countless swords. The forest of swords also gently trembled along with his footsteps, as if to express their allegiance. With an absolute advantage, Wang Lu was not in a hurry to make his move. It seemed that he just wanted to keep the other party here. The magician AKA's mind quickly turned. The other party said that you also have a similar method and he finally found it. What does this mean? Could it be that? After all, he was a knowledgeable profession. AKA quickly thought of a possibility: universal law, cultivation-based transformation. Although it was unimaginable, it was the only possibility. The so-called universal law referred to the fact that although there were many differences between the 9 regions and the Western continent, in essence, there were still many similarities. For example, when an apple is ripe, it will always fall to the ground. Above the 9th heaven is a void. In the deep sea there are tens of thousands of tons of pressure. Although there were many subtle differences, especially for the more powerful the individual, the more obvious the difference. For example, the Eastern cultivators paid particular attention to enlightenment. Brilliant cultivators would integrate the great Tao of heaven and earth into their jade mansion. However, the strong people of the Western continent didn't have such a unified concept. The path to the highest level was strange, not as unified as that of the 9 regions. With such a huge difference, the result was that when they set foot on another continent, it was likely that they would be suppressed by the law and their cultivation base would be scattered. Therefore, for thousands of years, although the communication between the 2 continents was increasingly frequent, it was more of a mortal's interaction. When one reached the high-order profession, they would be very cautious. However, thousands of years ago, when the civilizations of the Eastern and Western continent collided for the first time, a great sage pointed out that within the complex appearance, there were many similarities between the 2 continents. As long as one could grasp these similarities, it was possible to achieve the cultivation-based transformation and break through the wall of law. Of course, this required an exceptionally brilliant perception. Rumor has it that during the first war between the Eastern and Western continent, there was a brilliant swordsman from the 9 regions who, after landing on the Western continent, became a sword saint of the Western continent. There was also an example of a magister from the Western continent who went to the 9 regions and comprehended the 9 regions' immortal path. However, those only existed in the history books and their authenticity was doubtful. In fact, in recent years, there were countless strong people who died in a foreign land, regardless of whether it was the Eastern or Western continent. However, not many people were able to comprehend the law and successfully transform their cultivation base. Only some people with low cultivation base could do it. The more powerful one was, the more difficult it was to transform. Although there was still a long way to go from the legendary realm to the high-order profession, it was very difficult to transform the cultivation base. And now, right in front of him, a high-order profession from the 9 regions, in just a few moments, comprehended the law and transformed the cultivation base? Was this a miracle? In fact, Wang Lu didn't exaggerate that he could comprehend the law and break the wall of law in just a few moments. When he crossed the endless sea with the fleet, he had gradually come into contact with the law of the Western continent. After he went ashore, he did not stop to take the opportunity to comprehend the law of the Western continent, trying to find the part of the law that could be combined with his non-phase method. One of the biggest characteristics of non-phase method was its strong adaptability. Soon he had a bond with the law of the Western continent. And when the blood-stained scroll fell, the law of the Western continent suppressed him in all directions, which suddenly became the opportunity for a breakthrough. At this time the magician Akka was also thinking. The broken sword world where he was now seemed to be the rumored inherent enchantment, which was different from the general maze technique. The difficulty of breaking through was much higher. However, since the other party didn't immediately kill him, it meant that there was still room for mediation. On the one hand he might as well use words to delay, on the other hand he unfolded the magic array to try to break it. If it was an Eastern magic array he knew that he was powerless. However, if it was a Western continent magic array, perhaps there was a glimmer of hope. Therefore, he immediately opened his mouth to try to delay the time. However, just as he brewed his lines, he felt a chill behind his back and a sword tip appeared in front of his chest. The holy shield that was given to him by the priest was actually gone. Feeling the rapid loss of his life, the magician tried his best to turn around and saw an innocent smiling face. He didn't know when a beautiful and peerless girl stood behind him. Her right hand was holding an ancient nine-region sword, and the sword was not stained with the slightest bit of blood. Be careful behind you. Chapter 286. What do you think? After withdrawing his original magical ability, Wang Lu didn't care about the magician and priest who fell from midair and just asked Aya with a smile. Aya said, "Very powerful, you always surprise me." For Aya, the destruction of that team of adventurers was not surprising. Although their bloodstained scroll was a new thing, under the cover of the bloodstained scroll, the power of the 10 people's concentrated fire was really amazing. However, if Wang Lu couldn't even overcome such a crisis, then he was not the Wang Lu that Aya was familiar with. However, even so, Aya didn't expect that Wang Lu and the others actually solved the problem in the most direct way. Universal law, cultivation-based conversion. Demon wolf Fenrir was a native creature of the Western continent, but for some reason it ran to 9 regions. Because it grew up in 9 regions, it could be considered as having 2 advantages. Bai Shirshen was a mountain spirit, so she had the deepest understanding of the mountains and rivers. Moreover, immortal beasts were psychic, so in terms of perception, they were often stronger than complex human beings. However, Wang Lu and Lu Li have solidly comprehended the laws of the Western continent and immediately applied what they learned. Was cultivation-based conversion that difficult? Not necessarily. Aya herself completed the cultivation-based conversion in 9 regions as a legendary profession, from the Night King to the Sword Immortal of 9 regions. Although she rarely made her move in 9 regions, people on Spirit Sword Mountain were very clear that when she went all out, her strength was comparable to that of a Supreme of Unity stage. Of course, when her body of the brave departed was incomplete, going all out was tantamount to suicide. However, it took Aya more than 10 years to complete the cultivation-based conversion. Of course, that was because her cultivation base was too high, which was why it was slow. However, Wang Lu was able to comprehend the law in just a few days, including the time after sailing at sea near the Western continent, which was really admirable. Aya suddenly felt that her body of the brave departed had become a bit more solid, which made her startled. Obviously, it was because her trust in Wang Lu had increased a bit, which strengthened her sense of identity with the way to win the war, thus her body of the brave departed had become more stable. If this continues, perhaps one day it will really be possible. However, when he thought of his country that had already passed away, he could not see any hope at all. However, that was not something to consider now. For the time being, let's see how far Wang Lu could go. In response to Aya's praise, Wang Lu smiled and placed his right fist on his chest. "I will fight for you, my queen." Aya was stunned for a moment. Looking at the familiar etiquette, she felt as if she had returned to more than 100 years ago. She stood in the hall surrounded by her ministers, shining brightly. Her Royal Highness was a group of steel-like knights, invincible and successful. The best men of the kingdom gathered in one place, fervently swearing eternal loyalty to their king. But in the blink of an eye, the illusion in front of her was restrained by Aya's strong willpower. The woman nodded and corrected him. "Your posture is correct, but strictly speaking, I am not a queen." Not considered a queen? Wang Lu was a bit puzzled. Before he set off, he vowed to help Aya restore her country, so naturally he had to check the relevant information. The information in 9 regions was limited, but Aya's former Night King name could be considered as illustrious, which was recorded in some historical records of the Western continent. How could she not be a queen? Could it be because... After thinking about it, Wang Lu comforted her with a smile. "Don't belittle yourself like that. Although it's only a cup, at least your face is good-looking. It doesn't matter if you call me queen." Even though Aya had always been known for her tolerance and humility at this time, she also felt that it was good to occasionally kill. However, it was related to her own reputation and even the reputation of the kingdom, so Aya seriously explained, "When I was on the throne, I didn't show myself as a woman to the world. Except for a few people, most people didn't even know that I was a woman. This was, of course, to maintain the majesty of the king. If Aya was in another profession it would be fine. However, with her petite and exquisite body, she walked the most valiant knight path. A female knight might be a beautiful story in the folklore, but in the end, it was not as oppressive as a man. However, as soon as Aya finished her explanation, she felt that things were going to get worse. Sure enough, as soon as her voice fell, she saw that Wang Lu looked at her with more sympathy. Unexpectedly, no one knew about it. "I can understand your pain. My condolences." Condolences what? Aya was seething with anger. She felt that her many years of upholding the knight's spirit had been insulted. If this happened 100 years ago, a duel would be inevitable. However, this time it was too late. Because when Aya was ready to carefully argue with Wang Lu, another group of uninvited guests came. It was a team of knights riding on horses and wearing silver armors. From afar they were very aggressive. After returning to the western continent, Aya's strength continued to recover. When she first saw this team of knights, her eyes could not help but turn cold. The strength of these people was quite good. Each of them was on the threshold of being promoted to a high-order profession. In 9 regions they were around Shudan stage. Their equipment and horses were extraordinary. If they were put on the battlefield, if there were no opponents with the same strength, perhaps tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of troops would be scattered. Even in her kingdom, which was famous for producing outstanding knights, this was still considered an expert. And here, in the vicinity of Deep Earth City, if she wasn't mistaken, they should be the personal guards of Deep Earth City's city lord. When Aya saw the 2 gray-brown robed shield guards at the back of the team of knights, she was even more sure of her conjecture. Because they were the specialty of Deep Earth City, Deep Earth Guardians. They wore heavy armor and could communicate with the earth and borrow the power of the earth. The strength of these 2 people was not inferior to the dozen people in front of them. They should be the right and left arms of the city master. The mounts of the team of knights were very spirited. In just a moment they arrived at the front. The leader of the team glanced at Wang Lu and the others. Especially when he saw the tragic battlefield next to the carriage, he could not help but frown and sternly asked, "What's going on here? Tell me honestly." This bad tone and attitude caused a backlash on the spot. Wang Lu sneered. "It's none of your business that I, your father, am killing people." "Impudent." The group of knights shouted in unison. Several of them simply pulled out their swords, ready to use force to deter them. As the personal guards of the city master, most of them had rich experience. Seeing this bloody scene, how could they not see the cause of the matter? As an important trade hub between the East and West continent, in recent months, Deep Earth City has received many cultivators from 9 regions. And then, robberies and murders of 9 regions people were not uncommon. Initially it started from the nearby larger port city Wuxia City, and then gradually spread to Deep Earth City. At present, it was obvious that they were killed instead of killing people. From the scene, it could be seen that these 9 regions cultivators were ambushed on the road. In fact, most of the recent killings were like this. It was just that, these people had special means so that they didn't repeat the mistakes of others. Instead, they made the determined ambushers lose their lives one after another. Therefore, it was reasonable to say that they were the victims. However, the knights present could not sympathize with the victims. Each and every one of them had a gloomy face. Especially when they heard Wang Lu's reaction, they glared at him, wishing that they could help those ambushers and catch all these 9 regions cultivators in one fell swoop. When the situation was tense, a Deep Earth Guardian at the back of the team said, "We are the personal guards of the city master of Deep Earth City. We found traces of a fierce fight outside the city, so we came to check it out." Seeing the friendly attitude of this Deep Earth Guardian, Wang Lu also put on a smiling face. "Oh, it's your duty, I understand. Your dispatch speed is quite fast." The Deep Earth Guardian nodded. "If there is any big fight within a certain distance of Deep Earth City, we will be the first to be alerted, especially in a situation like this." Wang Lu said, "Oh, I see. Comrades, you've worked hard. Goodbye." With that, he turned around and was about to board the carriage. "Stop, who said you can leave?" The silver-armored knight captain sternly shouted, "After killing so many people, you want to leave?" Wang Lu turned around and said, "What? Do you want to avenge these robbers? When did Deep Earth City collude with these robbers?" "Shut up. Even if you're a barbarian from a different continent, you should know that you must abide by the laws of that place. According to the Deep Earth Code of Deep Earth City, after a murder, whether you're the murderer or the victim, you must be investigated by Deep Earth City." "Oh, no matter who it is, they must be investigated? What if it's your father?" Seeing that the 2 of them were at loggerheads and a battle was about to break out at any moment, the Deep Earth Guardian hurriedly said, "The reason why we set this rule is so that we can grasp more information and better maintain the security of this place to prevent more murders from happening. I hope you can understand and cooperate with us." Seeing that Wang Lu and the others didn't respond, obviously unwilling to cooperate, the guard continued, "Recently, some adventurers have intercepted and killed 9 regions cultivators, which has attracted the attention of many nearby city masters. The master of Deep Earth City once said that if someone can help him solve this matter, he is willing to thank them. He said that most of the cultivators from 9 regions who came across the sea are here for treasure hunting, and the most famous treasure hunting place in Western Continent is Taba City. When the master of Deep Earth City was young, he experienced many adventures in Taba City. His experience in harvest will certainly help you. Thereupon Wang Lu's heart was immediately moved. Of course he didn't care about the general sense of gratitude. As the lead disciple of one of the 5 uniques, what kind of rare treasure couldn't he get? However, if it was the strategy of Taba City, then it was worth paying attention to. Very well, lead the way. The Deep Earth Guardian suddenly felt relieved. If they had a conflict with this group of 9 regions cultivators, regardless of the outcome, the master of Deep Earth City would certainly be furious. When Wang Lu agreed to go back to the city with the Deep Earth Knights to cooperate with the investigation, the rest naturally had no objection. The Knight Captain still had a gloomy face as if he had a feud with someone who killed his father. Along the way the Deep Earth Guardian explained to Wang Lu. Your Excellency, please don't mind his attitude, he also has his own difficulties. Some time ago, because the 9 regions cultivators were frequently intercepted and killed, one of your strong people vented his anger on the civilians and massacred tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians in Stormwind City. And the captain's family happened to be in Stormwind City, so he inevitably... Hearing this, Wang Lu was horrified. Massacred civilians? Chapter 287. Massacring civilians? At that time Wang Lu was startled. What kind of thing was coming to the Western continent these days? Since the news that the key to the group of immortal tombs might be in the Western continent was leaked, Wang Lu did not expect that group of miscellaneous soldiers could reflect the high quality that 9 regions cultivators should have. With a large number of cultivators from second and third-rate sects crossing the ocean, the occurrence of low-quality incidents was simply a matter of course. After all, in the Western continent, there was no Wuxia League to maintain the law and order of the world, and there was no terrifying ninth heaven thunder tribulation. After killing and arson, as long as one brushed one's clothes and safely returned from the ocean, there would be no consequences at all. Could the Western continent people form a group to go to 9 regions for revenge? Since the first contact between the Eastern and Western civilizations, similar things have happened from time to time. It was just that it was rare to see a city being massacred. Even if there was no heavenly tribulation in the Western continent, would they not be afraid of the demon heart tribulation after returning to 9 regions? Or was there really a devil sect that came to join in the fun? Wang Lu thought about it and could not help but sigh with emotion. This is simply pulling down the lower limit of the people of 9 regions. Although my Lingjian school has never regarded itself as the maintainer of the order of 9 regions, when encountering this kind of thing, I can't just stand by and do nothing. Tiske, a city massacre is rarely seen in 9 regions, but this is an eye-opener in the Western continent. Therefore please forgive his rudeness just now. After the Stormwind City incident, the people in several nearby cities have a more extreme impression of the people of 9 regions, so their attitude is inevitably offensive. Although the initial dialogue was full of unpleasantness, on the way back to the Deep Earth City, the Deep Earth Guardian repeatedly apologized to Wang Lu, which made him unable to lose his temper. Before long, the group returned to the Deep Earth City and met the master of the Deep Earth City, Sir Haddock, in a heavy fortress. Sir Haddock was a standard Western knight, and looked to be in his 40s or 50s. Time had chiseled lines into his meticulous face, but his neatly trimmed beard and short hair, and his sparkling eyes showed that he still had great energy. When they met, he was wearing casual clothes. Apart from the decorative sword on his waist, he didn't have any equipment that could be called armed. However, Wang Lu still felt a strong pressure when they met face to face. This Lord of Deep Earth City was at least a high-grade profession. Moreover, he was quite strong even among high-grade professions. He alone was stronger than the entire personal guards. This was also the norm of the city-states in the eastern part of the Western continent. Most high-grade professions were inextricably linked to the mortal world, and the lords of cities and even countries were usually held by high-grade and legendary professions. This was very different from the path of immortals and mortals in 9 regions. So when he saw Sir Haddock, Wang Lu was not surprised by his strength. But when Jazz opened his mouth, everyone was taken aback. Everyone, I already know what happened to you. In contrast, even Aya, the heroic spirit girl who had lived in 9 regions for decades, seemed to lack some of its charm. Seeing the surprised face of Wang Lu and the others, Sir Haddock gently explained, I found that when dealing with 9 regions people, if I can speak the native 9 regions language, I can always get unexpected benefits. You people attach much more importance to cultural identity than us. Later, I found out that I also have some talent in the Knight's Path. As a trade hub city, Deep Earth City's trade between the East and the West continent was of utmost importance. Although Sir Haddock was a high-grade profession and also the city lord, he still earnestly learned the language of 9 regions. After some idle talk, Sir Haddock sternly said, "I believe on the way here, my men have already told you about the situation. In the past month, more than 29 regions cultivators have been intercepted and killed in the territory of Deep Earth City, and only a few of you survived. This situation has seriously affected the order of Deep Earth City, but Deep Earth City alone is not enough to solve the problem. I need more help. Of course, I won't let you work for nothing." Sir Haddock went straight to the point and didn't waste time on pleasantries. That being the case, Wang Lu also went straight to the point. "You're the city lord of Deep Earth City, the great lord of a territory of thousands of miles. Can't you solve the security problem in your territory?" Haddock said, "If it's just a problem in Deep Earth City, I can naturally solve it, but there are deeper forces behind this matter. I believe you can also guess that the bloodstained scroll is not made by an ordinary person." Wang Lu said, "Yes, it seems that some powerful person is deliberately targeting us 9 regions people. Sir, do you have any clues?" The origin of the bloodstained scroll is very mysterious. At present there are not many conclusive clues. Half a month ago my men sneaked into an adventure team and met a scroll merchant. The kind of scroll that can suppress the cultivators of 9 regions can be bought for only 500 magic coins. The price is unbelievably low. 500 magic coins was a sky-high price for low-order professions, but it was nothing for high-order professions. Relying on the suppression of the scroll to intercept and kill the people of 9 regions, once successful, the harvest would be 10 or 20 times more. Naturally, it would attract people like a flock of ducks. However, Wang Lu had personally experienced the overbearing power of the bloodstained scroll. The method to manipulate the law of the Western continent to suppress people was not something that could be bought with 500 magic coins. At least in the 9 regions, with Wang Lu's current cultivation base, he didn't dare to hope that he could manipulate the world's main path like this. Perhaps only the elders of Heavenly Sword Hall had this kind of ability. However, the cost of making a scroll was more than 1,000 spirit stones. 500 magic coins, which was equivalent to 500 spirit stones, was basically a losing business. It should be because they don't want to expose their existence. Wang Lu speculated, using the scroll to incite the neutral adventurers to intercept and kill the people of 9 regions, while hiding behind the scenes. But what's the benefit of doing this? No matter how many people of 9 regions die, the spoils of war will still belong to the adventurers. If they sell the scroll, they won't even be able to recover their capital. Haddock said, "I was also puzzled by this at first. Generally speaking, there are only 2 kinds of people who would do this. One is the extremists who hate everything in 9 regions. However, in recent years, extremists have become fewer and fewer. Moreover, if they want to do something, they won't hide their heads and show their tails. They would rather fight in front of the public so that more people know their ideas. The other kind is the followers of some evil god, who use special rituals to please their god, but there are many things that don't make sense. It wasn't until 10 days ago that I realized that I was confused and didn't notice an obvious clue." Wang Lu asked, "What's wrong?" Sir Haddock somewhat wryly smiled and picked up a report on the table. "This is the latest trade data from my men. These days, our trade with the people of 9 regions has dropped by 70%. In addition to the situation on the Endless Sea, the biggest reason is the rapid deterioration of the public security in Deep Earth City, which makes many merchants and cultivators of 9 regions very uneasy. Although the storm on the Endless Sea has not yet subsided, many people have made up their mind to return to 9 regions. Many people have migrated to the western inland area because there has never been a killing incident against the people of 9 regions." Wang Lu gawked for a moment and then said with a smile, "Does this mean that we, the people of 9 regions, have been caught in the crossfire? In short, I suspect that there is someone behind the scenes trying to sow discord between the people of 9 regions and our Deep Earth City?" In fact, not only Deep Earth City, almost all of our eastern city-states have encountered a similar situation. Even if it doesn't happen in our own territory, if it happens in the surrounding area, it would still make people panic. Wang Lu asked, "Who can benefit from this? What enemies do your eastern city-states have?" "Our eastern city-states generally rely on trade. To do business we need to make friends. Generally speaking, we won't deliberately make enemies. But, speaking about enemies, we do have them." Haddock pondered for a moment and then said, "Have you ever heard of Holy Light Religion?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Is it some kind of welfare organization that specializes in women's skirt?" Haddock froze for a long time and then helplessly explained, "Holy Light Religion is the largest religious organization in the Western continent. Their power is mainly concentrated in the Western region. They believe in holy light and generally speaking they are a decent organization. However, in recent years they have shown a strong aggressiveness. They have no tolerance or pity for the heretics. In order to expand their power they do everything possible. If they can be conquered by force, they conquer by force in the name of holy war. Otherwise, they use various means to carry out internal destruction. For example, this bloodstained scroll is likely to be their handiwork. When it comes to the perception and manipulation of the continent's laws, who can compare to holy light religion? At the same time, they have been trying to annex the Eastern Kingdom for a long time, but they haven't succeeded. So that's how it is. Since you have locked the real culprit, then immediately unite the many city-states of the Eastern Kingdom to form a coalition to crush them to death. Burn all the holy light religion believers on the stake and so on. Haddock said, the power of holy light religion is too strong. We can't even protect ourselves, let alone take the initiative to attack. On the surface, they have more than 5 legendary-level powerhouses, which is far above the Eastern Kingdom. 5 legendary-level powerhouses? TSK. Wang Lu repeatedly shook his head. In 9 regions, a legendary-level powerhouse was equivalent to peak deity stage or even supreme of unity stage. A sect with 5 legendary-level powerhouses was basically the same as the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. To provoke such an opponent, wasn't that just asking for trouble? By the way, Sir Haddock said, the destination of your trip, Taba City, is one of the holy places of holy light religion, which is strictly managed and ruled. Therefore, for you, holy light religion is something that you can't avoid. What the? There's such a thing? I never said it. I also frowned. Is there such a thing? More than 100 years ago, Taba City was jointly governed by various countries. When did it become the holy place of holy light religion? Haddock replied, 80 years ago the current pope received an oracle, saying that Taba City is the holy place of holy light religion, and then dispatched holy light knights to capture Taba City. Chapter 288. According to Sir Haddock, the master of Deep Earth City, holy light religion has become a barrier that Wang Lu and the others could not bypass. In addition to the bloodstained scroll incident, they also occupied Taba City and regarded themselves as the master. In recent decades, the development of Taba City in the mainland was under the control of holy light religion. In fact, after occupying Taba City, holy light religion truly became the most powerful organization in the mainland. Before that, their influence was only limited to one country. There is no doubt that they have obtained great benefits in Taba City. Rumor has it that someone in the religion has been recognized by the Golden King's treasure house and became in existence similar to an administrator. Although they can't use the treasures at will, their authority is still very amazing. Wang Lu asked, they occupied Taba City, don't the other forces have any ideas? Haddock lightly said, of course there are, but they were hurt, so there's no more. Although Sir Haddock said it lightly, Wang Lu could imagine that it must have been accompanied by a bloody storm. And holy light religion, who had paid a great sacrifice to occupy this place, naturally would not easily let it go. However, Wang Lu didn't come here to take away the Golden King's treasure house. He only needed the key, so there was no need to fight with holy light religion. The only problem was, would holy light religion allow Wang Lu and the others to easily take away the immortal treasure-level key from the Golden King's treasure house that they regarded as their exclusive property? Judging from the current situation, holy light religion simply wanted to get rid of the 9 regions' cultivators as soon as possible. Holy light religion did not deliberately target 9 regions, but in their view 9 regions' people are undoubtedly heretics, and sacrificing the heretics on the stake and turning them into a part of the sea of holy light is a matter of course. They call it purification. Wang Lu ridiculed, like the big fish eating the small fish and the small fish eating the shrimp, is it purification? Sir Haddock said, in the view of holy light religion, the world is filthy and sinful, and can only be freed by converting to the holy light. As for the method of conversion, kneeling down and kowtowing is conversion, and being burned into holy fire on the stake is also conversion. In any case, if you want to achieve your goal, you inevitably have to deal with holy light religion. After a pause, the knight said, of course, if you want to contend against a behemoth like holy light religion, it's obviously not enough, but your sect certainly can. Wang Lu was curious. You can tell who my master is. Sir Haddock explained, of course I can't see where his master is, but I at least know that a young 9 regions cultivator who has not yet crossed the threshold of a high-order profession, yet can comprehend the universal law and transform his cultivation base, His origin is most likely not ordinary. Wang Lu smiled. Sir Haddock was indeed the lord of a city. Even though he was a knight, he relied more on his brain than his physical strength. Knight, do you want to use the power of my sect to fight against Holy Light religion? Haddock said, I'm definitely not trying to get something for nothing. I'm just taking advantage of the situation. Holy Light religion is our common enemy, so of course, it's better to join hands to fight against the enemy. Your sect must have a powerful force in 9 regions, but it lacks local support. We have all kinds of geographical advantages in the Western continent, but our strength is not strong enough. We can make up for each other's shortcomings, so why not cooperate? Of course, I know that you may not be able to decide on this matter, but I can convey my sincerity. Not only my Deep Earth City, but also the common will of more than 30 city-states in the Eastern Kingdom. Wang Lu nodded and admitted that Haddock's argument was indeed very convincing. To be able to get the support of the local forces in the Western continent was undoubtedly very helpful. However, the price of this help was to offend the amazing power of Holy Light religion. The pros and cons were not easy to calculate. In particular, he was very clear that the Lingjian school and even the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League had no interest in investing a lot of energy in the Western continent. After all, this was not the 9 regions and there was no 9 regions heaven and earth Tao. This place could be used as an excellent experiential learning place, but it was not a home and it would not be a home. Therefore, for all kinds of disputes in the Western continent, he just needed to look on coldly from the sidelines. For the sake of the Western continent natives, there was no need to invest precious power to pull chestnuts out of the fire. The people of the Western continent liked to expand and colonize, but the people of 9 regions were not so interested. Although Haddock's idea was good, it was doomed to be an illusion. However, the idea of joining hands was not wrong. It's very difficult to persuade the sect, but it's just a small matter, why bother the sect's elders? Seeing Sir Haddock slightly frowned, Wang Lu explained with a smile, one of the important foundations of Holy Light religion is Taba City, and the ruling power of Taba City, on one hand, is established through many years of killing, and on the other hand, it is recognized by the king's treasure house itself. The latter is not without the possibility of being shaken. Sir Haddock frowned even tighter. Sorry, I don't quite understand. In short, it's to make the king's treasure house no longer recognize them. The inheritance left by Golden King has its own rules. Since Holy Light religion became the administrator, it must have pleased the king's treasure house. So, as long as I do better than them, wouldn't I have the opportunity to take away the administrator position? Rumor has it that Golden King's favorite thing to do is to throw out the bounty and let the warriors under his command fight for it. He is the king who extremely encourages competition. So, it stands to reason that the administrator position of Holy Light religion is not hereditary. Haddock nodded again and again. Yes, that's the truth. But it's easier said than done to seize the administrator position. Before Holy Light religion, for so many years, no one was able to unify Taba City and get the recognition of the king's treasure house. Wang Lu lightly interrupted, that's because I didn't come. 3 days later, Wang Lu and the others departed from Deep Earth City. During this period, Sir Haddock, the master of Deep Earth City, accepted Wang Lu's proposal to cooperate with Wang Lu's special operations. That is, to sneak into Taba City and subvert the rule of Holy Light religion over the Holy Land. In a single sentence, this operation plan was almost like a joke, but Wang Lu was very persistent, almost stubborn, and Sir Haddock didn't want to needlessly offend a young genius from 9 regions. Not to mention that in these 3 days Wang Lu also showed his formidable strength. Perhaps in terms of level, he was just a young man who hovered before the King Pill, which was the threshold of a high-order profession. But before the King Pill, without condensing the 9 regions' great Tao into his body, his strength in the Western continent was ultimately limited. The conversion rate of cultivation base was also not 100%. But even so, he was still very strong, so strong that Sir Haddock couldn't do anything to him even if he personally made a move. As the master of Deep Earth City, Sir Haddock was also a first-class powerhouse among the 36 city-states in the Eastern Kingdom. Although he was still far from the legendary realm, ordinary high-order professions couldn't withstand his sword for more than 3 to 5 moves. Relying on his Radiant Knight's powerful body, he could sweep away thousands of troops and horses. When he swung his sword, the sword momentum was like a stormy sea, enough to destroy a city and destroy a country. Whether it was the magician's strange magic, the spirit master's rare birds and beasts, or the shaman's elemental power, he could cut them all with one sword strike. If compared to the standard of 9 regions, he was an out-and-out Yuanying stage master. Moreover, he was a middle-level Yuanying stage master. However, such a master was helpless after Wang Lu launched his original magical ability. Although he was not defeated, he was completely helpless against Wang Lu. In the inherent enchantment, Wang Lu combined offense and defense. Although his nature was more inclined to defense, he could use the power of the broken sword to continuously weaken and disturb the opponent, making Sir Haddock unable to make his move even though he had the absolute power. Occasionally, when he seized the opportunity to confront Wang Lu head-on, he found that the earth sword that he was so proud of could not disintegrate Wang Lu's 3 feet sword defense. Instead, under the counterforce he felt a faint numbness in his arm. In a one-on-one fight they were evenly matched. However, once Wang Lu joined forces with the others, whether it was Lu Li by Shi Xian or Quan Zihua, they would quickly gain an overwhelming advantage, forcing Sir Haddock to admit defeat. In fact, in theory, if Sir Haddock's fighting power was 10, then Wang Lu's peak level was 8 to 9, and the others were not stronger than Wang Lu. Even if the two of them cooperated, at most they could barely suppress Haddock. After all, fighting power was not a simple addition. Thus, in actual combat, the overwhelming advantage naturally came from Wang Lu's grasp of the battle. It was also because of this that Sir Haddock approved of his plan. Individual fighting power is basic but not the key. I am a professional adventurer. My real skill is to overcome the dangers with limited strength. After recognizing the ability of Wang Lu, Sir Haddock sent one of his deputies, Cliff, to go with Wang Lu. He was a short night walker, a high-order thief profession. He had accompanied Sir Haddock for many years. They once explored the king's treasure house together and assisted him to obtain the key treasure, which later allowed Haddock to establish his own city-state on the eastern coast and become the master of millions of people. In terms of treasure house exploration experience, he and Sir Haddock were almost equal. For Sir Haddock to send him was enough to show the importance he attached to Wang Lu. At the same time, he also sent a carriage with the mark of Deep Earth City. With the protection of the master of Deep Earth City, they did not encounter any trouble along the way. It was not that the prestige of the master of Deep Earth City was enough to deter the small fry, but everyone understood that it was one thing to intercept a group of 9 regions cultivators who had no foundation in the Western continent, but another thing to make a move against the people of the Eastern city-state. Half a month later, the carriage of the master of Deep Earth City, carrying Wang Lu and his team, crossed the Eastern city-state, entered the central region of the Western continent, and came to the outside of Taba City. Taba City, the paradise of Western continent adventurers. With the ruins of the king's treasure house as the center, after thousands of years, a huge city-state was formed. Within a radius of thousands of miles, there were countless large and small towns and villages. And these were all for the service of the towering city in the center, Taba City. It was a city far more magnificent than imagined. Compared to it, Sir Haddock's decades of hard work, Deep Earth City, which occupied the port trade hub, seemed particularly small. The population of the city was probably in the millions. Previously, there was no absolute ruler in Taba City. When it was governed by a number of countries, it seemed scattered. But now, after it was designated as the Holy Land by Holy Light religion, the power was unified, and it burst out in astonishing pressure. Standing at the city gate, Wang Lu seemed to see an endless sea of holy light. And, standing above the sea of holy light, the Golden King who was at a higher place. In his ears, he seemed to hear the laughter of the ancient king. "Bastards, do you want my treasure? Then go and get it. I put everything in the king's treasure house." Chapter 289. When the carriage of the master of Deep Earth City arrived outside Taba City, Cliff began to seriously introduce the situation of Taba City to Wang Lu. The core of Taba City is the Golden King's treasure house. All the facilities in the city are built around the treasure house. And the reason why this city is so magnificent is because there is not only one entrance to the treasure house, but almost infinite. Moreover, they are scattered all over the area of hundreds of miles, without a trace. In the beginning, people would even find the entrance to the treasure house in a boulder or an ancient tree. Later, these entrances were gradually sorted out and marked. Later, in order to unify the management, this city was built. Wang Lu asked, "The entrances are scattered? So do they all lead to the same place?" "Different. The internal structure of the king's treasure house is very mysterious. It is divided into many independent spaces, large and small. Each entrance corresponds to a space, but the corresponding relationship is not fixed. Even if it's the same entrance, different entrances may lead to different treasure house spaces. However, according to the current understanding of the treasure house, there are still traces to follow. First, the number of treasure house spaces is not infinite. The number should be around 1 million. Second, the corresponding relationship between the entrance and the treasure house space is not completely random. Generally speaking, 1 million treasure house spaces can be divided into 9 layers. The level of the treasures hidden in each layer and the difficulty of the test are roughly the same. The entrance in Taba City can only lead to a fixed level of treasure house space. Wang Lu nodded to show his understanding. The same entrance, even if it leads to a different space, the level is fixed. Cliff said, in the 9 layers of the king's treasure house, at the beginning there are only ordinary gold and silver jewelry, but as the level increases in the 3rd and 4th layer, there will be very precious treasures. For ordinary adventurers, those are rare treasures that are enough to make them risk their lives to get them. And from the 5th layer onwards, it is even more extraordinary. Even high-order professions will be moved. My master, Sir Haddock, obtained the Deep Earth God seal on the 6th layer and established his own city-state. Wang Lu sighed softly. Deep Earth God seal? Sir Haddock established his own city-state? According to the strength of the Sir, it was probably a middle-grade spiritual treasure. Previously, when they were comparing notes in Deep Earth City, he didn't use it. Obviously, it was a life-or-death treasure, so he wouldn't easily see it. If the 6th floor already had middle-grade spiritual treasures, what would the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors be like? The Golden King was indeed worthy to be the most ancient king in the Western continent. He ruled his country for tens of thousands of years, leaving behind countless epics and legends. Only when his lifespan was exhausted did the country collapse, but his influence was still passed on forever. Both of them were kings, and Aya was also the famous Night King, and her strength was even at the legendary level. However, compared to the Golden King, even someone as proud as Aya admitted that she was inferior. However, no matter how magical the legend of the Golden King was, no matter how illustrious the reputation of the king's treasure house was, it was, after all, tens of thousands of years ago. Dishin's group of immortal tombs was built about 16,000 years ago. As a matter of fact, the time was not right, but Wang Lu had a strong hunch. The key to the group of immortal tombs was here. In the past, Golden King's prestige shook the Western continent, and he had great ambitions. To say that his eyes had never crossed the endless sea and had never seen the scenery of 9 regions. Was it possible? For the time being, it was unknown how much the two were related. However, as long as he went deep into the treasure house, Wang Lu believed that he would be able to find the answer. And according to his own ability, he would start from the 6th floor. Cliff frowned. I'm afraid not. Right now, the entrances to the 3rd floor and above are basically under the control of Holy Light Religion. If you want to enter the king's treasure house, you must register with Holy Light Religion. And if you want to enter the 5th floor and above, you need the approval of the Bishop of Holy Light Religion. With our origin, it's basically impossible to pass the approval, even the registration can't pass. And above the 7th floor is not open to the public. And then? Cliff said, no ruler can perfectly control every corner of the territory. Although Taba City is the holy land of Holy Light Religion in such a huge city, there will always be places that they can't take care of. Although most of the entrances to the 3rd floor and above are controlled, the entrances to the 1st and 2nd floor are too scattered, so they simply can't manage them. Right now, most of these entrances are under the control of the Brotherhood. Brotherhood? Cliff explained, the ruler of the underground world. There's an underground world where the holy land of Holy Light Religion is located? Cliff smiled slightly. No matter how strong the sunlight is, it can't penetrate the earth. Where there are people, there will be light and shadow. Wang Lu said, you're a night walker, so you should have a connection with the Brotherhood. Cliff said, yes, that's why the master sent me. I can contact the Brotherhood to help you get the admission qualification. But my relationship with them ends here. It's impossible for the Brotherhood to offend Holy Light Religion for you. In short, don't trust them. Wang Lu nodded, inwardly saying, I actually don't trust you. The Brotherhood only controls the 1st and 2nd floor entrances to the treasure house, but the space inside the treasure house is not completely isolated. If you achieve an amazing result in a trial on a certain floor, then you can pass the trial and enter the next floor. In theory, you can go deeper into the treasure house from the 1st floor to the 9th floor. Of course, this is very difficult. Entering from the lower floor entrance and going deeper into the treasure house is far more difficult than directly entering from the higher floor entrance. As far as I know, those who pass the trial in the treasure house can only go as deep as the 6th floor, and the treasures that you want are at least in the 7th floor. But the master said that you're a professional adventurer, so you shouldn't care about this difficulty, right? Wang Lu gently nodded. Of course I don't care. From the bottom floor to the bottom floor until I pass the trial. Professional adventurers like this kind of 0 to 1 game the most. Very well, since you have the confidence, then I'll take you to see the Brotherhood. After entering Taba City, the carriage moved in a low-key manner in the city. Even the mark of Deep Earth City was hidden. There were holy light knights and holy light priests patrolling everywhere in the city, so the mark of the eastern city-state would only bring trouble. Under the guidance of Clive, they came to a dilapidated tavern. Gold Rush City was full of adventurers who came to seek treasures. Taverns, baths and other service industries were also flourishing. However, this tavern was dilapidated and deserted, seemingly out of place. Wang Lu and the others followed Clive into the tavern. Inside, in addition to the sloppy bartender behind the bar, there were only 2 or 3 bored burly men looking after the place. Seeing Wang Lu and the others come in, they didn't even lift their eyelids. Clive quietly made a gesture in front of his chest and softly said, "May the shadow shelter us." The bartender then became serious. "Nightwalkers from the east? What can I do for you?" "We want to enter the second floor of the king's treasure house." The bartender looked at this group of people. Seeing the oriental faces of Wang Lu and the others, he immediately understood. However, he didn't say much and just nodded. "Sure, do you know the rules?" Clive said, "Of course, there's no free lunch in this world." Obviously, to enter the king's treasure house through the entrance of the Brotherhood, they needed to buy a ticket. The bartender asked again, "Buy out or share?" Clive turned around and waited for Wang Lu's decision. "Wait, buy out and share? What does that mean?" Clive explained, "Share means that according to the harvest of the treasure hunt, the Brotherhood will take a percentage of the commission, ranging from 20% to 50%. There are 2 types of buyout. One is to pay the ticket in one go, and the Brotherhood will have nothing to do with how much they get after that. The other is to charge according to the time spent searching for the treasure, and the specific harvest is not considered. Generally speaking, those who are confident in their strength can buy out, and share is more reliable. Well, the charging service is quite humane, but what if they die inside? The bartender smiled sinisterly. "We don't take money from dead people." In other words, if the adventurers died in the treasure house, the Brotherhood would not get anything. However, it was a business without capital, so it was not a loss. "With your situation, if it's share, we'll take 40%. Clive was surprised. "So high?" "A group of cultivators from the east wants to search for treasures in Taba City. Now they can only go through our Brotherhood. We have no reason not to ask for a sky-high price. If it wasn't for the Nightwalkers, we would at least ask for more than 50%. The bartender said, "If it's a buyout, it will be charged in magic coins, 200 for an hour and 1,000 for the night." Wang Lu was startled. "Wait a minute, this charging standard is very strange. Sorry, it's booking the whole place, not the night? Sorry, I've been on duty in the bath center for the past few months." The bartender patted his bald head. "In short, the price is right. What do you choose?" "Of course it's the night." "No, it's the whole place." "Oh, booking the whole place? It seems that you want to pass the level one after another? Good luck, Easterner." The bartender's smile was not good. The price set by the Brotherhood was actually very reasonable. 200 for an hour and 1,000 for the whole place, which meant that they had to stay in the treasure house for at least 5 hours. However, the first and second floor tests were not that complicated. Generally, they could pass in 1 or 2 hours. Those who chose to book the whole place were confident that they could get an excellent evaluation on the first and second floor, so that the treasure house could open a deeper passage and continue to explore after the 3rd floor. But according to the experience of the Brotherhood for so many years, if they wanted to get the key to a deeper level, the possibility, hey, tonight was really big. Not long after, the group, under the leadership of the Brotherhood, saw the entrance to the king's treasure house in the underground wine cellar of the tavern. It was a huge wooden barrel. After opening the lid, there was a void and a deep whirlpool slowly rotated. Behind the whirlpool there was a long and deep corridor with neat brick walls on both sides. Torches illuminated the front, but in the end, it was hidden in the darkness. Seeing this scene, Clive said, "Meeting on a narrow path? Our luck is really good." Meeting on a narrow path. Clive explained, "At the end of this long corridor, there will be a golden guardian, whose strength is roughly equivalent to a high-order profession. As long as you defeat him, you can pass, and if it goes well, you can enter the next level. It belongs to the relatively simple and clear space of the treasure house, which is very suitable for you, the powerful treasure hunters." "That simple?" "The first 2 floor tests are only for miscellaneous soldiers, so of course it's simple. The existence of the king's treasure house is somewhat like recruiting courtiers for the dead Golden King. The first 2 levels are just the lowest level of miscellaneous soldiers. As long as you have a certain amount of martial arts, you can pass. The truly complex space is only after the 4th level. The group chatted as they walked. As soon as Clive's voice fell, a golden figure appeared in front of them. It was a tall and sturdy giant like a small mountain. He wore heavy golden armor and held a giant battle axe in his hand. His aura was astonishing. As Clive said, he was indeed at the level of a high-order profession. One person could break thousands of soldiers and horses. However, in the eyes of Wang Lu and the others, he was just a big wooden dummy. After all, it was only the 2nd level, so there was no difficulty to speak of. However, just as Wang Lu and the others were ready to pass, suddenly, an arrogant laughter came from the end of the passage. Ah, another overconfident bastard broke into my treasure house? What the hell, what kind of thing is this? Clive somewhat nervously said, "This is the Phantom of the Golden King. He is everywhere in the treasure house but not often encountered. However, every encounter means that there will be an accident. Sometimes he will send a disaster, sometimes he will make a request to the treasure hunters, and sometimes he will simply give a reward which is hard to predict. But in short, we must obey his will because this is his treasure house." Wang Lu said, "Simply put, he is the publisher of a random event?" Speaking to this, suddenly the Golden Guardian at the end of the passage roared. His whole body was ignited with a bloody mist, and his strength skyrocketed. Oh, the monster went berserk? Does this mean that there will be a disaster? What an unfriendly publisher. The next moment, the laughter of the Golden King echoed in the passage. "Insects, do your best to please me." "Insects?" Wang Lu frowned and touched his chin. "Do you want to please me?" Then he raised his head and stepped forward. His original magical ability, the Broken Sword World, which has become an inherent enchantment in the Western continent, was unfolded and contained the entire passage. The Golden Guardian who guarded this passage looked at the bloody world around him with some confusion. He was only one of the lowest level guards of the Golden King's treasure house. Even if his power was stimulated by the will of the Golden King, he still lacked enough wisdom to understand this change. In fact, if it were a relatively high-level guard of the treasure house, he would never allow the opponent to pull him into the inherent enchantment. However, this Golden Guardian instinctively felt that the young man in front of him was a great threat, so he needed to come up with all his strength to deal with him. He crisscrossed the 2 axes in front of his chest and adopted a defensive posture, because he felt that the young man in front of him seemed to be good at defense and not good at offense. The next moment he felt a sharp pain in his back. His thick armor was pierced by a sharp weapon, and a snow-white sword came out of his chest. "Be careful of your back." At the last moment he heard the innocent voice of a young girl, and then he fell into endless darkness. Clive, who watched the whole thing from the side, was astonished and tongue-tied. That's it? In his view, the strength of that Golden Guardian was not weak. After being stimulated by the Golden King, it became even more powerful. Although it was only on the 2nd floor, its strength was comparable to the 3rd and 4th floor guards. No matter what, it should be a hard fight. Perhaps even him, the tour guide, would have to be involved. However, he didn't expect. Thinking of Lu Li's sword that came and went like a ghost from behind, even as a night walker, he was somewhat terrified. However, solving the Golden Guardian didn't mean that it was over. Just now, since the illusion of the Golden King had appeared, then what to do next would have to follow the instructions of the Golden King. However, after a long time, when the Golden Guardian at the end of the passage had turned into a handful of fine sand, its golden armor and body had completely decayed, the voice of the Golden King didn't ring again, and the end of the passage didn't open. Whether it was leaving or entering the next floor, the road ahead was blank. "What's going on?" Wang Lu somewhat impatiently asked. Clive shook his head with a wry smile. The illusion of the Golden King was very rare. In the past, he and Sir Haddock had ventured hundreds of times in Taba City, but they only encountered the illusion once. That was on the 6th floor. His master Haddock got the appreciation of the Golden King and was rewarded with a Deep Earth seal, which then led to the Deep Earth City. But the whole process was inexplicable. His understanding of the Golden King's illusion was also obtained from his constant exchange with other treasure hunters. To explain the current situation, he was really helpless. After thinking about it, Clive guessed, just now, His Majesty Golden King wanted us to please him, and now, perhaps he's not satisfied with our performance? Wang Lu angrily said, "What's there to be dissatisfied with? Do you want us to strip off the Golden Guardian's tentacles and teach him a lesson?" Clive was taken aback. How can you say such blasphemous words here? Wang Lu angrily said, does that mean you look down on quick attack in the face? What's wrong with a man being a bit faster? I think, F***CK you're not satisfied with this and that, why are you so difficult to please? Seeking to please isn't that just for fun? With that, Wang Lu fiercely shouted, little girl, quickly give this uncle a good time. Just when Clive was about to be scared to death by Wang Lu, Golden King's voice once again surged. Ah! What an interesting little bug. Come on, go deeper into the treasure house and let me see how much ability you have. If you can satisfy me, I will forgive your rudeness just now. While speaking, the fine sand of the Golden Guardian gradually condensed into a huge golden brick, the reward for clearing the level as well as a glittering golden key. At the same time, a door appeared at the end of the passage. The door leading to the third floor of the treasure house. Chapter 290. What kind of person is this Golden King? Walking on the winding road on the third level of the treasure house, Wang Lu somewhat bored and asked. The third level of the treasure house was not as simple and clear as the second level. The spatial structure was extremely complex. According to Cliff's experience, the theme of this level was a maze. Because it was only the third level, there would not be a large number of guardians or dangerous traps in the maze. The test was how fast one could get out of it. It was a peaceful and comfortable level, but it was also a test to wear down one's patience. According to Cliff's understanding, even if one had the ability to eliminate all the interference and directly follow the most concise and correct path, it would take at least half a day to get out of the third level of the maze. That was to say, his choice to buy the ticket to enter the treasure house was correct. And as a professional adventurer, Wang Lu's ability to walk through the maze was indeed brilliant. At each intersection he made a choice almost without thinking, and then, according to his Nightwalker intuition, it seemed that the exit was getting closer and closer. Along the way it was calm, there were no guardians or traps. Wang Lu was bored, so he began to chat and asked about the Golden King. The legend of the Golden King was basically known to the people of the Western continent. He was the most ancient king recorded in the history of the Western continent after the Savage Era. He established a powerful kingdom in the center of the continent, with vast territory and powerful national power. His reign lasted for tens of thousands of years, leaving behind countless epic legends. Legend has it that his strength was so powerful that it surpassed the legendary realm and even reached the realm of God. Legend has it that he took all the treasures in the world as his own and stored them in the king's treasure house. Legend has it that he was tyrannical, suppressing the country with his powerful strength and brutal rules. There was a great difference between the Western continent and the 9 regions. The historiography here was far from developed enough. Therefore, when tracing back to the legend of tens of thousands of years ago, it was basically based on the scale, and the authenticity was completely unreliable. Nowadays, a lot of the knowledge about the Golden King was obtained from the process of treasure hunting in the king's treasure house and the contact with the phantom of the Golden King. There were very few historical materials from tens of thousands of years ago to the present. Therefore, when it came to the Golden King, it was not easy to talk about it. Only a very knowledgeable scholar could do it. At least Cliff was far from it. Fortunately, there was indeed a knowledgeable person in the group. I know a little about the history of the Golden King. After all, he is known as the king who stands at the top, so I have to study it. In the historical materials, he is cruel and heartless, a tyrant through and through. But how could such a tyrannical king establish the first country in the continent and continue to rule for thousands of years? In fact, his tyranny was mostly aimed at the mediocre people at the bottom. He was very generous and merciful to those who could obtain his recognition. According to historical records, he had bestowed many treasures to his trusted generals. He had a group of loyal subjects and a stable regime. So I think, even though most of the historical materials are criticizing him, he should be a very charismatic king. Wang Lu smiled and said, "You also find him charming?" Aya shook her head seriously. "No, I'm disgusted with his way of ruling. Although his achievements are world-shaking, I think it's not the right way. Frankly speaking, I hate him." Wang Lu smiled. People often say that people in the same trade have a relationship of pure hatred, and it is indeed true. You bunch of kings just don't like each other, right? Aya was a little angry. In your opinion, am I that narrow-minded? When Wang Lu's eyes met with Aya's pair of angry green eyes, the words, "A cup girl shouldn't be entangled in narrow-mindedness and generosity," that were already on the tip of his tongue suddenly couldn't come out. Wang Lu quickly changed his words and said, "I'm just joking, don't mind it. Just, his achievements are so high, it's hard for you to say that as someone in the same trade." Aya sternly said, "The achievements of the Golden King are indeed far higher than mine, and I also admire this. But think about it from another perspective, he has an unprecedented talent, and his strength is comparable to that of God. During his reign there were no powerful foreign enemies, so why did his Golden Kingdom collapse? Why can his glorious reign only be traced back to the ruins of Taba City? Why do most of the historical materials deny his rule? I think this must be a flaw in his way of being a king. I believe that the virtues of generosity, kindness, humility, and so on should be treated equally, not differently. Only paying attention to those who are powerful and excellent, and despising those who are humble and insignificant, this kind of method is too eager for quick success, and also somewhat petty. Of course, the most important thing is, as a king, the ruler of the people, one should always have a fair heart, and must never indulge in selfish desires, let alone abandon the public for personal reasons. A king is more of a responsibility than a privilege. If one can't recognize this, then he is not worthy to be the ruler of the people. Without this awareness, instead of establishing a country in the mortal world, it's better to be like the cultivators of the 9 regions, living in seclusion in the mountains and valleys, and then unifying the world. Aya's heartfelt words had been brewing for a long time, and she had never said them to outsiders. Wang Lu was stunned and thought, "Comrade Aya, it's a damn pity that you don't serve the people with this awareness." However, deep down Wang Lu disagreed with Aya's idea. Amiable and approachable, treating everyone equally? It sounded nice, but this was not just an idealization, it was simply nonsense. It was completely contrary to the objective law of things. No wonder Aya became the ruler of a subjugated country. However, he had already thought of this. When he vowed to help Aya restore her country, Wang Lu realized that before restoring her country, he must at least correct Aya's wrong idea of governance. Otherwise, even if the country was restored, it would only repeat the same mistake and the country would perish again. Of course, now was not the time to train Aya. Arguing with a stubborn person like her would only cause them to part on bad terms. So, it was better to coax and tease her first. "Yes, Aya, you're right. The power of a ruler comes from the people, so he should serve the people wholeheartedly, and must not use power for personal gain. If you want to be an official, don't even think about getting rich." Aya's eyes lit up. "If these are your sincere words, I have to look at you in a new light. I heard that you have developed a sect in 9 regions, which attaches great importance to the grassroots construction. I think you're on the right path." Wang Lu turned his head to hide his sympathetic and compassionate eyes. "Aya, you're really worthy of being the ruler of a subjugated country." While talking, Wang Lu had led the team to the exit of the 3rd floor. This labyrinth, which had trapped many adventurers for 10 days to half a month, was broken by Wang Lu in just a few hours. With such excellent results, it was only natural that he earned a golden key to the next floor at the exit. The reward was also quite generous. This time he obtained a treasured saber that gleamed with a cold light. Just this saber alone was worth several thousand magic silver. He had earned back his ticket money. But strangely, the phantom of the Golden King never appeared again. On the 4th floor the situation changed again. The 4th floor of the treasure house was unexpectedly a simple and direct test. When they came out of the entrance they saw a circular arena. At the other end of the arena, 5 golden guardians stood side by side, exuding murderous aura. Cliff's complexion changed. Endless arena? This is going to be troublesome. What? Could it be that these 5 people are the Fua combination that can transform into the magical 5 rings? Wang Lu asked. Cliff shook his head. They are nothing special, but this is only the 1st level. After defeating the 5 of them, more powerful guardians will appear, and they're endless. Generally speaking, as long as you win more than 2 rounds you can pass, but if you want to enter the next floor, no one knows how many levels you have to pass. In this Golden King's treasure house, it's too difficult to crush them by force. I've communicated with many treasure hunting teams, and almost no one can pass such a level. Wang Lu lightly said, "That's because I didn't come before." Cliff's tiger body was trembling. While speaking, Wang Lu once again took the lead and rushed toward the 5 people. While taking a step, his original magical ability spread out, which accommodated the entire arena. The 5 golden guardians were still slow to react to the change of environment. After staring blankly for a moment, they instinctively formed a formation, 3 in the front and 2 in the back, which was a standard defensive formation. These golden guardians were half living beings and half puppets. They had almost no wisdom, only fighting spirit. Therefore, in the arena the golden guardians were the most valiant warriors. The reason why they could instinctively adopt a defensive stance was because the pressure from Wang Lu's original magical ability was too strong. However, it was only because this magical ability to transform space was too advanced that it had an instinctive suppressive effect on the Golden Guardians. In terms of strength, it was impossible for Wang Lu to suppress 5 Golden Guardians who were comparable to high-order professions. After all, he was good at defense, not offense and control. However, for Wang Lu, being able to suppress the opponents for a moment was enough. Rise. Along with Wang Lu's order, the more than 100 messy broken swords under the feet of the 5 Golden Guardians suddenly swelled up, becoming dozens of times larger than the original, forming a dense fence, which then formed a sword prison, which locked all 5 Golden Guardians inside. The Golden Guardians immediately brandished the various heavy weapons in their hands and began to bombard Wang Lu's sword prison. However, this sword prison contained the formless sword chi, which was incomparably strong. Although the 5 of them attacked together, it would take them a while to break the sword prison. And in this short period of time, a huge shadow fell from the sky. It was a mountain. A huge mountain composed of solid reddish-brown rocks, which almost completely filled Wang Lu's magical ability space, fell from the sky. Bai Shixian stood behind Wang Lu, her slender arms raised high, drawing the anger of the earth. That was the power she borrowed from the earth with her mountain spirit body. Although simple, it was undoubtedly very powerful. The 5 Golden Guardians roared in unison. At the last moment they broke the sword prison, but it was too late to dodge, so they could only take it with their bodies. The next moment the mountain fell to the ground, and with a loud rumbling sound, the entire magical ability space trembled violently. If it were any other high-order profession, they would have been crushed into minced meat. However, the Golden Guardians were indeed the subordinates of the Golden King, who were good at using brute force to break technique. The 5 of them formed a formation and unexpectedly withstood Bai Shixuan's Mount Tai pressure. They saw that between the mountain and the ground, 5 burly and powerful figures abruptly propped up a gap. Under the push of the 5 Golden Guardians, the huge mountain actually faintly tilted to the side. My goodness, in terms of strength alone, I'm afraid these Golden Guardians are almost as strong as Sir. Cliff was secretly shocked. At the same time he was also thinking, how would Wang Lu's side deal with these 5 indestructible warriors? Generally speaking, only magicians, spiritualists, and the like could use a variety of means to disintegrate the Golden Guardians. Fighting them head-on was really unwise. However, among Wang Lu and the others, it seemed that only Bai Shixuan's means were a bit more diverse. The next moment the answer was revealed. Be careful behind you. It was still the same familiar line, but Lu Li's entrance was completely different. At this time, a girl in a colorful dress was standing behind the 5 Golden Guardians. The girl's figure appeared particularly slender between the mountain and the ground, especially compared to the giant sword that she was holding in her hands. This time, Lu Li didn't use her flying sword to stab them from the back. Instead, she had already stood in position, waiting for Wang Lu and Bai Shixian to display their respective means to control the 5 Golden Guardians, making them unable to move. She then took the opportunity to refine the most powerful weapon in her hand. The sword of the ancient sword god Zhong Xingming, Skybreaker. As a former immortal-level flying sword, Skybreaker had too much power. Although Lu Li's aptitude was high, her cultivation base was shallow. At this time she might not even be able to display 1% of its power. However, this less than 1% was enough. She drove the flying sword with her brilliant sword heart, ignoring the hundreds and thousands of sword arrays contained in the sword body. She just urged it to grow bigger and bigger, until it became as big as a mountain and incomparably heavy. She couldn't display the magical ability of Skybreaker, but the quality of the sword body was undoubtedly an immortal treasure. She expanded the sword body thousands of times. Even though it made her move slow and without any flexibility and precision, if one couldn't avoid this blow, anyone would die without a doubt. And at this time, with the sword prison and the pressure of Mount Tai, how could the 5 Golden Guardians who were known for their strength dodge it? The next moment, Lu Li smirked and swept the Skybreaker forward, destroying the sky and extinguishing the earth. Be careful behind you. The sword swept out and there was no front or back. Chapter 291. The 5 Golden Guardians were annihilated under the might of the Skybreaker. However, before people could sigh with emotion at the power of Lu Li's sword, the next round of the fight had already begun. Lu Li's sword swept across, and Wang Lu's original magical ability was somewhat unable to withstand it and disintegrated. The red mountain summoned by Shixian also gradually turned into nothingness. A group of people reappeared in the Golden King's arena, and the opponent in the arena has been replaced by a warrior whose stature was a bit taller than the Golden Guardians and was similarly covered in heavy armor. Compared to the Golden Guardians, his armor and weapons were much better. The surface of the armor was flowing with a sparkling luster, showing its extraordinary quality. There was also a scepter hanging on his waist, which also contained a profound mystery. Although the opponent in the second round was only one person, this person's imposing manner was much stronger than the previous 5 Golden Guardians combined. Cliff exclaimed, "This is the Golden King's warlord. Be careful, he is stronger than dozens of Golden Guardians." After a pause, Cliff somewhat panicked and said, "It stands to reason that the Golden Warlord will only appear on the 4th floor after the 6th round. He is an opponent that is almost impossible to defeat. His appearance often means the end of the arena's winning streak. Even the treasure hunters who can go deep into the 7th floor would find it difficult to defeat him. How could he come out now?" Wang Lu snappily said, "Of course it's that wisp of remnant soul that's looking for fun. To be able to change the rules of the treasure house so casually besides Golden King himself, who else could it be?" However, there was no time to care about that because the Golden Warlord has already moved. If he doesn't move, then he will be like a landslide or tsunami. As a powerful enemy whose quality was far superior to the Golden Guardians, the Golden Warlord took a step forward, and the entire arena suddenly trembled. Endless power gathered in his body, as if it was about to erupt like lava. However, at this time Wang Lu's figure fiercely rushed forward. His indestructible 3-feet sword defense just happened to block in front of the Golden Warlord. The Golden Warlord suddenly couldn't take the second step. With a rather awkward posture, he raised his sword and fiercely collided with Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan. Boom! Without any fancy moves, the two swords buzzed and Wang Lu's bones trembled. This Golden Warlord's strength was not inferior to that of Taoist Master King Pil, who specialized in body cultivation in Royal Soldier Sect. Encountering such an opponent, there were many forms, but the less specialized magical ability couldn't be used. However, now that they were fighting as a team, Wang Lu didn't need to play the role of controlling the field. After taking a deep breath to relieve the numbness in his limbs, Wang Lu once again wielded the sword of Mount Kuan, firmly blocking the Overseer in place, making it difficult for him to move even an inch. This Gold Warlord was even stronger than Sir Haddock in close combat. Apart from himself, anyone else would be in danger. However, with Wang Lu's firm support in the front, Lu Li and the others went all out to attack. Flying swords, sharp fangs, and lightning left all kinds of scars on the Golden Warlord's armor. The defense of the Warlord's armor was almost against the heaven. Although it was shaken by the attacks, it never fell. Just as the battle situation gradually became clear, the Golden Warlord roared, swept the sword in his hand away from Wang Lu, and then immediately pulled out the scepter on his waist. With a flash of golden light, the Warlord's scepter lit up with a strange light. Wang Lu felt a strong throbbing in his heart, and his body involuntarily operated his non-phase immortal heart to suppress the shock. What the hell, a control skill? Moreover, the control power was so strong. No wonder it was a team-wiping artifact. If not for the non-phase methods against the heaven and ignoring control, it would be strange if the most important character of the team didn't change sides. However, while Wang Lu was spared, someone behind him was hit. With a mournful howl, Quan Zhuhua bit the nearby Lu Li with its big bloody mouth. This attack came without warning, fast and ruthless. Fortunately, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart had a keen intuition for the surrounding changes. As soon as the warning flashed in her mind, the girl floated away like a light smoke and immediately warned Wang Lu. "Senior brother, Huahua is hungry. Even I want to eat it. Isn't it time to eat? Actually, I'm also hungry." Hearing this from the front, Wang Lu wanted to vomit blood. "Feed yourself some brain platinum first. Little Bai, you cooperate with Lu Li to suppress that stupid dog. Protect yourself first, no need to be distracted. Pay attention to your position, don't get bitten by that stupid dog." Bai Shixian replied, "Yes." Although Lu Li was inwardly confused, she was very obedient. Cooperating with Bai Shixian, they urged the cold sword chi to freeze Quan Zhuhua's movement until it became sluggish. Thus, her earth-shattering close combat power could not be displayed at all. During this period, Wang Lu single-handedly challenged the Overseer, not hesitating to injure himself by using the nameless sword. The Golden Overseer single-handedly held his scepter, making it difficult for him to move. Thus, under Wang Lu's desperate attack, he was forced to put away his scepter and once again hold his sword to suppress Wang Lu. Then the battle entered a stable rhythm. In the front, Wang Lu was as steady as Mount Tai, while Lu Li and the others went all out to deal damage. When the Golden Overseer felt the danger, he wielded his scepter and controlled the person behind Wang Lu. That scepter had an irresistible power in the treasure house. Except for Wang Lu, no one could escape. If it were an ordinary team, they would have been flustered and would have been wiped out. However, Wang Lu's stance was too stable, and the ability of the several people behind him was also very outstanding. The battle proceeded smoothly without any surprise or danger. As time went by, the Overseer's wounds grew more and more, and his struggling strength gradually weakened. When the Golden Overseer lifted his scepter for the 5th time because of his leg injury, he staggered, which exposed a huge flaw. Lu Li took a step forward, and the Skybreaker flew out of her hand and thrusted forward. "Hey big guy, watch your back." Under the heavy helmet of the Golden Overseer, his orange eyes slightly flashed, seemingly wondering why he should watch his back when there was a flying sword coming at him. The next moment, the flying sword penetrated his chest. Unexpectedly, that indestructible golden armor couldn't block it at all. In the blink of an eye, the sword pierced through his back, and at the same time, a dark rain of blood burst out. "So, this is the meaning of watch your back?" The Golden Overseer gawked for a moment. His orange eyes gradually dimmed, and then with a loud crash, his body turned into fine sand. Following the defeat of the Golden Overseer, the arena was suddenly filled with earth-shaking cheers. However, as far as the eye could see, there was clearly no audience in the stands, so the cheers were really horrifying. However, along with the cheers, gold coins, gems, and other things continuously flew from the stands, as if the audience was satisfied and crazily rewarded them. Regardless of whether the audience was a human or a ghost, these rewards were all genuine gold and silver. Wang Lu waved his hand, signaling Lu Li to collect them. After a moment, the spoils of war were tabulated. Not to mention gold and jewels, there were more than 100 magic coins, not to mention that some of them contained magical power and were very valuable equipment. It was just that, at present, there was no time to carefully appraise them. In short, the reward for passing this round was really generous. However, just as everyone was collecting the spoils of war and preparing to go to the next round, the 3rd round of battle began. 2 platinum figures gradually appeared at the other end of the arena. How come there are still more? Cliff was inexplicably surprised. Just now, after Wang Lu and the others defeated the Golden Overseer with "Against the Heaven and Earth," he thought that the arena would condense a golden key and open the next level. Unexpectedly, they still haven't passed this round? When did the standard of the King's treasure house become so strict? Was it really the illusion of the Golden King? Having no time to think about it, the Nightwalker immediately went into stealth mode. According to the agreement, he didn't need to participate in the battle. As long as he could protect himself, that was enough. In fact, with the cooperation of Wang Lu and the others just now, he couldn't intervene. A moment later, the 2 figures gradually became clear. One was a knight in a bright silver armor, and the other was a priest in a snow-white robe. Both of them had an oval emblem on their chest, symbolizing the endless source of holy light. Holy light religion? Who are you? Both sides simultaneously exclaimed in disbelief, because no one thought that they would meet other treasure hunters in the 4th level of the arena. Is this the winning streak reward? Interesting. Wang Lu's reaction was the fastest. While the opponent was still in a state of shock, he has already made his move. His non-phase sword chi spread all over his body, forming a 3-feet sword defense, and then he directly pounced on the silver-armored knight. Before the enemy's strength was known, he must be the team's strongest insurance. The silver-armored knight was caught off guard and was pushed back by Wang Lu. Together with the priest, their formation was in a mess. Damn it, how could there be a yellow-skinned bastard here? The knight flew into a rage out of shame. He loudly cursed as he regained his center of gravity and summoned his silver holy sword in his palm. The priest behind him, on the other hand, used the emblem of holy light to activate the divine protection spell that he had stored. Then, he patted his partner's shoulder and cursed, "The idiot in charge of the assessment must have been blind. How could they let bastards in after the 3rd level? Haven, purify him." The knight named Haven immediately waved his silver holy sword. The blessing from his bloodline and holy light made it burst out with amazing power. The holy sword danced, and its power was not much inferior to the Golden Overseer's. Wang Lu blocked it with his sword of Mount Kuan and felt a scorching force spreading along the sword. "TSK, is this holy light? It's disgusting." Compared to the direct brute force of the Golden Overseer, The knight's power was a bit weaker, but it was particularly difficult to deal with. The holy light energy that spread into his body contained a disturbing element. Little white, pay attention to support. Luli, don't get too close. Stupid dog, pay attention to my rhythm. The next moment Wang Lu suddenly changed his pace and rushed forward with a tough stance. The knight's reaction was extremely fast. He immediately saw through Wang Lu's intention. He immediately released a holy seal on his sword, and then waved his silver holy sword with all his strength, trying to block Wang Lu. This slash was aimed at the vital point, completely a lose-lose situation, forcing him to save himself. However, Wang Lu didn't care at all. He forcibly withstood this sword with his body, and while his body was being corroded by the holy light, he took the opportunity to rush toward the priest behind the knight. Everyone pay attention, let's heal him. Damn it. The knight was horrified because his sword strike was useless, and Wang Lu immediately broke through it. He never thought that someone could use their body to resist his purifying holy silver holy sword. That was the most toxic energy for the heresy bastards. It was a power invented by holy light religion to purify the heresy, so it should be successful in every endeavor. Of course, there was indeed no shortage of unusually powerful individuals among the yellow-skinned bastards. For example, the one who committed the heinous crime in Storm City was a legendary level powerhouse, and one person could easily destroy a country. His own purifying holy seal naturally wouldn't be effective against him. However, the young man in front of him was obviously not that strong. Otherwise, with just a wave of his hand, he would have been turned into ashes. How could it take so many rounds? It was just that he didn't expect his defensive ability to be so amazing. No, I can't let him succeed. Hai Wen clenched his teeth and released a holy flame from his body to wrap around Wang Lu, trying to block his charge. The priest also cast a holy shield as a defense against the charge. In the revelation of the holy light, among the yellow-skinned bastards in front of him, Wang Lu was the most threatening. Diske. With the holy shield in front and the holy flame behind, Wang Lu's charge had to stop. The resistance of the two high-order professions of holy light religion was astonishingly great. However, they spent too much attention on Wang Lu, which led them to ignore the opponent that they should not ignore. With a howl, the demon wolf Fenrir suddenly appeared behind the priest and swallowed him and the dozens of holy shields on his body. Then, with a sway of its body, it digested the priest until nothing was left. Devouring demonic wolf? The holy knight recognized the identity of Fenrir and immediately knew that the situation was hopeless. The priest was killed in seconds. In any case, it was impossible for him to survive under the siege of so many people. In that case, the holy knight pinched the holy light emblem on his chest and madly roared, "Accept eternal torture in the sea of holy light, yellow-skinned bastards. You want to blow yourself up?" Feeling the crazy and turbulent holy light energy, Wang Lu didn't dare to hesitate. If the holy knight really blew himself up, he would be fine, but the teammates behind him would be finished. Therefore he took a step forward, threw the holy knight to the ground, and then firmly pressed him to the ground. The next moment, the tsunami-like power of holy light ignited from the holy knight's body and crazily gushed out. However, most of it was suppressed by Wang Lu, and only a small amount of energy escaped. "Senior brother? Wang Lu, are you crazy?" Behind him, the concerned voice of his teammates was a little vague under the burning of the holy light. For a moment, Wang Lu only felt dizzy, and there was no part of his body that didn't hurt, as if he was poisoned and about to die. This time, the injury was serious and there were already some injuries to his muscles and bones, but Wang Lu couldn't care so much anymore. He was the leader and the most important shield of the team. When there was danger, he was duty-bound to stand in front. After a while, Wang Lu slowly stood up and felt that the injury had begun to heal, but the speed was slow. Obviously, there was a special component in the holy light and he needed to slowly adjust it. However, he had finally passed this hurdle. However, just as Wang Lu was ready to welcome the golden key to clearing the 4th floor, a dull voice came down from above. "Who dares to trespass into the holy land of our sect?" Wang Lu's thoughts flashed, and he had already guessed the identity of the speaker. Damn, the administrator came out. Chapter 292. The power of holy light religion in Taba City was monstrous, and their biggest reliance was that they had an administrator in the king's treasure house, which held many special privileges. The specific content of these privileges was the top secret of holy light religion, which outsiders were not privy to. However, holy light religion, after all, did not completely close the king's treasure house. After being open for so many years, the outside world has gradually summed up some rules. First of all, the administrator's authority was not omnipotent. The owner of the treasure house was still Golden King, and from the fact that Golden King's illusion would appear in the treasure house, it could be seen that Golden King has not given up the sovereignty of the treasure house, even if he was dead. The administrator of Holy Light religion was only recognized by the treasure house and temporarily exercised the administrative authority. To put it bluntly, he was just working for the treasure house. Therefore, it was impossible for him to unscrupulously modify the rules of the treasure house. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better for him to directly take out all the treasures and give them to Holy Light religion? The administrator's authority was strictly limited, and he must follow the basic rules of the treasure house. For example, the opening of the king's treasure house was partly because Golden King wanted to show off his wealth to the world, so anyone could come in and could not be stopped. Of course, in fact, Holy Light religion had already set up an interception outside the treasure house. At the same time, Golden King hoped to take this opportunity to recruit warriors. Therefore, only those who met the conditions of Golden King were qualified to take away the treasure. Another example would be that the tests given to treasure seekers in every treasure vault had to be traceable. They couldn't just set up an ancient dragon at the simplest test location on the first floor, and the reward was a copper coin. However, on this basis, the administrator's autonomous authority was also very terrifying. For example, on the second level, the enemies that the treasure hunters encountered were not fixed. They could be golden guardians or other treasure vault guardians of similar strength. However, similar strength did not mean that the difficulty of dealing with them was also similar. For example, several guardians with very strange and difficult to defend abilities were enough to give people a big headache. At this time, the role of the administrator manifested. If he did not want the treasure hunters to pass, he could send the most difficult guardian and reward them with the harshest standard, so that the gains and losses were completely disproportionate. In addition, as an administrator, there were too many tricks that could be played. Therefore, he might as well put it bluntly. If you were targeted by the administrator, then no matter how great your ability was, it would be useless. However, the manager's energy was limited after all. He had to eat and sleep, so he couldn't keep an eye on every corner of the treasure vault at all times. In fact, according to the previous information of the Brotherhood, the Holy Light Religion administrator would only pay attention to the registered treasure hunters of Holy Light Religion. As for those who entered through the Brotherhood's entrance, he didn't bother with them. After all, the Brotherhood only controlled the entrances to the first and second floors. Even if they did something in these two floors, it was not worth paying attention to. As for those who could pass through the third floor and beyond, the difficulty was too high. Even if one did appear, it would be a bargain for the time being. Therefore, when Wang Lu entered the treasury, he didn't pay much attention to the administrator. Now that he saw the administrator descending from the sky, he was shocked. Am I so radiant that I will be the center of attention wherever I go? I was equally surprised. She said via primordial spirit, isn't it obvious? You killed both of them. If *CK they're just two small fries. Is there a need to go this far? Bastard. Aya was dumbfounded. Didn't you read the advanced instruction manual that I wrote for you? Sorry, I prefer to read the instructions with pictures. You? Aya remembered that in order to write the finished product within the deadline for Wang Lu's reference, she locked herself in the dark room in the kitchen, racking her brains to write the words, but the result was unexpectedly, in her entire life, even her opponents and enemies had never looked down on her like that. Listen, even if they are not high order, those two are, after all, professions. On our side, unless it's an extremely rare situation, professions must have a bloodline inheritance. Ordinary people, even if they cultivate for a lifetime, could not master the power of a profession, which is a very rare and precious talent. Because even if the potential of a profession is limited, as long as they have the bloodline of a profession, it means that their descendants may become powerful professions. Not to mention that those two people's level is almost the same as yours, so how could you say they're a bastard? You killed two professions of Holy Light religion in the treasure vault, so of course, it would alarm the administrator. Wang Lu sighed. In short, you killed the young one and the old one came? Then there's nothing to say. The decisive battle has been advanced. Aya, you should also prepare to make your move. In the first few floors, no matter what the situation was, Aya always looked on with cold eyes and never made her move. Because her spirit of the brave departed body has not been completely stabilized. Although the power of her move was amazing, the side effect was also big. As a former Unity Stage expert, Aya's power must be used at the critical moment, and that was now. Very well, according to the agreement, I will listen to your instructions and become the sharp blade in your hand. After ending the conversation with Aya, Wang Lu entered the battle preparation. Although he hasn't seen the real body of the administrator, time must not be wasted. He must as soon as possible integrate the whole team's strength. Speaking of which, the team's lineup was quite perfect. He played the role of protection and insurance, Bai Shixian was the healer, and Lu Li, Quan Zhouhua and Aya were all superclass damage dealers. At the same time, there was also a quite versatile Nightwalker as a foreign aid. As long as his god-level commander performed well, even a god could be pushed down. Sorry, I have to go. When Wang Lu was ready to make the pre-battle mobilization, he was stabbed in the back. Cliff somewhat ashamedly said, "My identity is special, so I can't directly participate in the confrontation with the administrator." *T, what the hell are you doing? Deep Earth City and Holy Light Religion are irreconcilable enemies, yet you don't even dare to declare war? Why don't you shave your head and then write a map to expand your territory? I'm sorry, my identity is not only Sir Haddock's deputy, but also a senior member of the Brotherhood. This time, I brought you here using my relationship with the Brotherhood. There's a fierce conflict. I'm sorry I can't harm my own people." With that, Cliff turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared without a trace. *T disappeared? Cliff's non-combat attrition was indeed unexpected, but from the beginning Wang Lu didn't seriously consider him as a fighting force. If he disappeared, then so be it. That way he would have less to worry about during the fight. "Aya, I'll have to trouble you to make the first move. I heard that you and Holy Light Religion have been enemies for many years. Presumably you've fought against each other a lot, so show me your combat experience." "Humph, very well, I've seen enough of your performance along the way." As she spoke, Aya suddenly lifted her gray cloak, revealing her full armor. The heavy plate armor condensed from highly pure magic power, the former proof of royal power, the symbol of the knight's good moral character, the legendary holy sword in the stone. The number was not much, but for the former Night King, such an armor was enough. "Show your true face, Golden King's Treasure House Administrator." Aya's eyes were clear and piercingly cold as she loudly issued a declaration of war. Since it was a fight, it must be done in an open and above-board manner. This was Aya's style. However, just as Aya revealed her true face, the hidden administrator suddenly let out a soft cry. "This smell seems familiar, could it be the remnant of Breton Dragon Clan?" Unexpectedly, the Purification War still failed to sweep away the remnant of Dragon Clan, and even let them take the initiative to enter the Holy Land. Upon hearing this, Aya's complexion suddenly changed. "Purification War? What is that? Sweep away the remnant? What did you do?" In the past, the fall of the country was no doubt due to the role of foreign enemies, but the main reason was the internal rebellion. Aya boasted that she was erudite and knowledgeable, and her wisdom was far better than ordinary people, even surpassing most of the kings. Perhaps there were some shortcomings in internal governance, but in confronting foreign enemies she had never tasted defeat. Even if the elite troops under her command were greatly damaged after experiencing the Civil War, she was confident that they would not easily lose to outsiders. "How could, Humph, it seems like I hid outside during the purification, allowing you to escape with your life. Unfortunately, you don't know the difference between life and death, and now you come to my door." Aya angrily said, "Show your true face, Administrator, speak clearly, what is the Purification War?" "Aha, if you want to know, then come and find me." After a series of crazy laughter, the administrator was completely silent. At the other end of the arena, a golden key slowly condensed, as well as the door to the next floor. "Don't run away, fight me fair and square. Don't you want to purify the bloodline of Breton Dragon Clan? I am the legitimate successor of the Dragon Clan, come and purify me. If you can do it, then come and do it." With that, Aya furiously brandished her holy sword. A sharp sword light flashed, and the entire arena was divided into two. Witnessing this sword that was enough to tear the dimension apart, Wang Lu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "What the Aya, your big move is empty." Aya turned her head, and her green eyes seemed to be ignited with fire. Wang Lu immediately clapped his hands. "Empty is good. Empty is imposing, you have to overwhelm the opponent with imposing manner." "Aya, you're so great, I'm your brain-dead fan." Aya said in a sinking voice, "I'm not in the mood to joke now. Previously, I only knew that my country was torn apart and was ruled by a new king, and Holy Light Religion played an important role. But I never knew that they actually dared to purify the bloodline of Breton Dragon Clan. How could they dare to do such a heinous thing?" Wang Lu shrugged. Even you, a scholar, don't know about it. How could I know? Although I'm the top student of Spirit Sword Sect, I have my own specialization. The only one who might know is that Cliff just fled without a fight. If you must ask, we can only rely on our guesses. Seeing that Aya was silent, Wang Lu tried to put forward a constructive opinion. Is your Breton Dragon clan the woman who robbed the Pope of Holy Light religion? Aya fiercely glared at him but didn't speak. Bai Shixian said, Senior brother, I heard that Holy Light religion forbids marriage. That's robbing a lover. In short, isn't the principle the same? Aya said, as far as I know, Breton Dragon clan has never had any dealings with Holy Light religion. Perhaps after I left, my descendants? But in any case, there are only a few cases of bloodline purification in the history of the continent. Could it be a crime of colluding with evil? But, seeing that Aya was so anxious that her internal organs were burning, Wang Lu sighed and patted her on the shoulder. It's useless to guess blindly here. Didn't that person say that if we want to see him, we have to go to the next floor? He must have prepared the trap, waiting for us to die. This actually gives me a clue. If this administrator can't rely on the king's treasure house, he wouldn't even have the courage to fight us. If that's the case, doesn't that mean he has the confidence to win? Aya said, let's go to the 5th floor. No matter what the truth is, I must dig it out. With that, Aya picked up the key and stepped into the entrance to the next floor. *T, I haven't finished yet. From another point of view, the other party is so confident in the 5th floor because he's clearly not afraid of you. Really? Wang Lu helplessly shook his head. With this kind of brain, how could he be the Night King? With that, he also stepped into the 5th floor of the treasure house. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.